Chapter 201. When Uncle Jiang and Jiang Qing were busy outside, Red Ju was in charge of the work. Everyone recognized Red Ju's work ability. With everyone's help, everyone created an atmosphere for me to rest. My belly was getting bigger day by day, and I was also nervous day by day. Fortunately, when I was 8 months pregnant, my mother came to the United States to accompany me. My mood was slightly better. After arriving in the United States, I cut off all contact with China. Everything was handled by Red Ju. Red Ju told me that Xinyao and Su Rue were married. The two of them were very loving and had chosen to go to Europe for their honeymoon. The two of them had looked for me, but Red Ju didn't tell them that I was in the United States. They should have also gone to my house to look for my parents, but they didn't get an answer. Red Ju said that Xinyao and Su Rue were already married. The two of them were very loving and had chosen to go to Europe for their honeymoon. The two of them had looked for me, but Red Ju didn't tell them that I was in the United States. They probably also went to my house to look for my parents, but they didn't get an answer. As for Han Hao and Duan Mu Ke, it was just as the Red Baron had guessed. At first, there was no news from the two of them, but after a few days, they started looking for me everywhere. My mother told me that Han Hao and Duan Mu Ke had visited my house more than once or twice, and it almost drove my parents crazy. They pestered them every day to ask about my whereabouts, and I didn't know where they got the Red Baron's contact information. The Red Baron told me that she would receive a call from either Han Hao or Duan Mu Ke every 3 or 4 days, and she could not answer it. It really made her a little frustrated, but I couldn't think of a better way, so I could only buy the Red Baron her favorite snacks to reward her. Just like that, it didn't take long for me to give birth to a daughter who looked a lot like Duan Mu Quebec. She was a chubby little girl, and after a long discussion, we decided to name her Lang Lingyu. We also thought of a very cute nickname for her, E. E's birth suddenly made my boring life meaningful. The most important thing for me every day was to take care of E. My mother was afraid that if I breastfed her, I would lose my figure, so she insisted on using imported milk powder, but I insisted on breastfeeding her. I knew that breastfeeding was good for the baby, and I felt especially happy every day when I looked at E. She was a good child who didn't cry or throw a tantrum. She would smile and greet familiar people when she saw them, and the way E smiled was very much like Duan Mu Quebec. Looking at her was like looking at Duan Mu Ke, and I still couldn't let go of him. When I was almost fully recovered and E could crawl, my mother returned to the country. Jiang Qing, his girlfriend, Cici, and the Red Baron all liked E very much. As long as they weren't busy, they would come to me to take care of the child for me. They would also take care of me at the same time. I repeated these peaceful days every day, and I didn't feel bad about it. Instead, I felt very happy. It was actually pretty good, just that I had less dependence in my heart. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, E was already 2 years old. E was a smart child, and she could speak a lot at the age of 2. Things in America were almost done, and during my time in America, I was also involved in a lot of things. Jiang Qing and Cici had successfully gotten married, and Cici had also officially joined the Red Minghui. The Red Minghui's American branch had also opened its second branch, and its business had also expanded to half of the city. The Red Minghui's development was flourishing, and I felt very happy. It seemed that it was time for me to return to America. This time, I was going to bring my E back. Maybe I would meet Duan Mu Ke, or maybe I would meet Han Hao, but I felt that E shouldn't live in America. Although America was very good, she should have received China's education from a young age, so I decided to bring her back to America. The day after I decided that E and I would return to America, I told Uncle Jiang my thoughts. After Uncle Jiang heard my thoughts, he thought for a long time before saying, "Xiao Li, E is gradually growing up, so it's time to bring her back. After all, this place is different from China, and the people you love are also in China, so it's time to go back." Just as Uncle Jiang and I were chatting enthusiastically, Jiang Qing ran in from outside the door in a panic. He looked at me and shouted, "Missy! Missy! Hurry up and hide! Quickly hide! There's a very fierce woman, she's barging in looking for you. I can't stop her, Missy, quickly run." I was already used to Jiang Qing's acting skills, and seeing his exaggerated expression, I was already used to it. But I guessed wrong. This time Jiang Qing didn't lie to me. Cold glaze. Quickly come out. I know you're hiding here. This woman's voice was very familiar, and just as I was guessing who it was, Xinyao walked in from outside the door. At that time, I was stunned, and almost dropped Yi in my arms to the ground. Xin, Xinyao? I was stunned. Hugging Yi, I stared at Xinyao with wide eyes. Xinyao glanced at Jiang Qing, then looked at Uncle Jiang, and then turned her head to glare at me. She threw the bag in her hands to the ground, walked in front of me, and asked with her hands on her hips, "Sister-in-law, you've been playing hide and seek a bit too much. How long has it been? You've been hiding from my brother and Han Hao Gij, and now you've been hiding from me and Suri as well. I'm so angry, so angry. Now that I've caught you, you can't run away. Let's see what else you want to explain to me." This was the first time I'd seen Xinyao so angry, and I was stunned. I hugged Yi, and I didn't know how to explain it to her. At this time, Yi sat in my arms, and pointed at Xinyao. In a childish voice she called out, "Pretty auntie." Everyone present was stunned. It was only then that Xinyao realized that Yi was in my arms. She was stunned for a moment, then she lowered her head and moved closer to stare at her. Yi saw that Xinyao had moved closer to her, but she wasn't afraid at all. She reached out to support Xinyao's face, and gently kissed her on the cheek. Xinyao was even more stunned. She looked at Yi, and suddenly smiled. "Ah, she looks so much like my brother. Don't tell me. Oh my God, is this my niece?" Yi looked at Xinyao and reached out to her. "I want a hug." Yi's cute appearance made Xinyao fall for it. She reached out and hugged Yi, and kept saying, "So cute. So cute. So cute. I like her so much." Xinyao kept playing with Yi. Fortunately, she had already forgotten about her revenge. Xinyao turned to look at me. "Sister-in-law, the baby is so cute. What's her name?" I looked at Xinyao and smiled. "Her real name is Lang Lingyu, and her nickname is Yi. You should give her back to me. I'm afraid she'll like you, and then not like me." Chapter 202. Xinyao pursed her lips. She looked at me and said, "No way. I don't want to give you such a cute baby. Right, little Yi? Little Yi and Auntie are the best, right? Xinyao, why didn't you wait for me? When you see Missy later, don't be too impulsive." "Missy?" I turned my head to look at the door. Suri walked in with big and small bags of luggage. The moment he saw me, he was stunned. Jiang Qing took the luggage from Suri. I stood up and looked at Suri. "When I saw Xinyao, I guessed that you would definitely come. Come, let me introduce you. This is Uncle Jiang. The one who helped you with your luggage is Jiang Qing. This is my personal bodyguard, Suri. The one holding Yi is Duanmu Kei's sister, Duanmu Xinyao. She is also Suri's wife." After everyone introduced themselves, Suri saw Yi in Xinyao's arms. He looked at the baby and then at me in disbelief. "Missy, is this your baby? It's so cute." I looked at Suri. "By the way, how did you guys find me?" At this moment, Xinyao turned her head to look at me. She shouted at me, "Sister-in-law, you still have the nerve to say that. If I didn't have a product launch event to attend in the US and met the Red Baron at the airport as soon as I got off the plane, I would never have guessed that you'd be hiding here. I'm so angry." Okay, I was wrong. Didn't you find me? So don't be angry. When is your product launch? Let's go watch it." I had no choice but to find an excuse to change the subject. At this moment, Suri looked at me and said, "Missy, how have you been in the US for so long?" I nodded and looked at him. "I've been fine. How are you guys? Is everything okay? How are your parents? How are your parents? How are they doing?" Suri nodded. "Everyone is fine. When you weren't here, Han Hao and Duanmu Kei always came to our house. Later, the president and his wife even went on a vacation for a month and a half. But they didn't come anymore. They probably couldn't find you, so they gave up. Of course not. My brother didn't give up. When I went home to see him, he wasn't in good shape. He didn't even smile. Mom and Dad and Mom asked him what happened, but he didn't say anything. We all felt for him, but we didn't know how to comfort him. Hearing Xinyao's words, I felt very uncomfortable. In fact, I missed him a lot. Now that I had put down the burden, I was ready to go back and tell him that I still loved him and that I was still willing to be with him. If he knew about Yi's existence, he would be very happy. At this moment, Xinyao looked at me and said, "Sister-in-law, my brother still doesn't know about Yi's existence. Are you going to bring Yi back to China and show her to him directly?" I shook my head. I haven't thought about how to tell him yet. I'll decide when I get back. What about you guys? When are you going back? Us? We also have to go back after the product launch. Why don't we go together? I nodded. Okay, I'm really happy to see you guys. Aya, this time I have someone to take care of Yi for me. It's rare that you like Yi so much, so I'll let you and Yi be alone for 2 days. I have something to take care of anyway. Suri, come to the meeting later. It'll be the last thing I have to do in the US. Suri nodded. Okay, I got it. In the afternoon, the few of us had a regular meeting. After we explained everything that needed to be dealt with in the United States, in order to celebrate the arrival of Xinyao and Su Rui, as well as to wish the success of Xinyao's new product launch, I decided to take everyone to Cece's bar in the evening to have some fun. There was still some time before the party, so I hugged Yi and lay on the bed to rest. At this moment, the Red Baron knocked on the door and came in. She saw that Yi had fallen asleep, then looked at me. It seemed that she wanted to talk to me. I saw that Yi was sleeping soundly, so she probably wouldn't be woken up. I got off the bed and followed the Red Baron out of the bedroom. When we reached the living room, I looked at the Red Baron and asked, "Did Zhongqing tell you about the party tonight?" The Red Baron nodded. She looked at me and said, "Yeah, Zhongqing did tell me. I'm looking for you because I have something to tell you. I just heard the news." I felt that what the Red Baron wanted to tell me was serious. I looked at the Red Baron and asked softly, "What's going on?" "I heard news from our country. It seems that there's a problem in Kurosawa. It said that an insider stole Kurosawa's information and sold it to someone else. He also transferred 30% of the Kurosawa shares to an outsider. As long as more than 50% of the shares are transferred, the Kurosawa will belong to someone else. Right now, Kurosawa is in a mess. Even President Duanmu doesn't know who's behind all this." I thought for a moment and looked at the Red Baron. "Is there any news about Xiao Ke? Does Xianyao know about this?" "I haven't heard anything from young Master Duanmu yet. Miss Duanmu has never been involved in Black Viper's affairs, so she shouldn't know. I think it's best if we don't tell her about this. Actually, Miss Duanmu's heart is very weak. She definitely won't be able to handle such a heavy blow." I looked at the Red Baron and asked, "How many people and funds do we have left in the country?" The Red Baron thought for a moment and looked at me. "We have 200 to 300 people. Our funds should be around 30 million. I nodded and said to the Red Baron, "How about this? First, contact our people in the association and transfer 5 million under my name. Then, use your own name to finance the Kurosawa. It should be able to relieve their pressure temporarily. We can discuss the rest when we go back. I can't count on Xianyao, so I can only ask you to do this for me." "Oh right. Don't tell father and mother. I'll find a suitable opportunity to talk to them." The Red Baron looked at me thoughtfully. She smiled and said, "Miss, there's something I don't know if it's appropriate to ask you. The Red Minghui and the Kurosawa are clearly opposing forces. Right now, the Kurosawa is facing a crisis of collapse and bankruptcy. Why do you insist on using your own resources to help them? Is it because you can't let go of your love for Duanmu Ke?" I sneered. I looked at the Red Baron and said, "Maybe. I should help him. Although my ability is limited, I can't give up my love for him. I don't want to see him hurt, nor do I want to see him under pressure. Let's just think of it as me silently paying for him. In the end, I really had no choice but to let go of Yi. Yi climbed up from the chair and into Xinyao's arms step by step. She was an extremely smart little girl. She took advantage of the situation and snuggled into Xinyao's arms. I looked at Xinyao with a dark expression. I whispered to her, "Xinyao, don't you think that Yi looks like you?" Xinyao smiled at me and said, "Of course, she's my niece. If she doesn't look like me, who else would she look like?" I covered my mouth and tried my best not to laugh. I looked at Xinyao and pointed at Yi. "Yi is just as perverted as you." After I said that, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Red Baron, who was sitting next to me, also covered his mouth and laughed softly. Suri poked his head out from behind Xinyao and nodded solemnly. I laughed even louder. "You guys are so annoying." Xinyao pursed her lips. She hugged Yi and said happily, "I have to thank Yi. She gave me the inspiration. I've decided that for the next release, I'm going to launch a children's clothing exhibition. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Think about it, how cute would Yi be if she wore the clothes I designed? I like Yi so much." After she said that, Xinyao kissed Yi on the cheek. I nodded and said, that's a good idea. It'll save me a lot of money on clothes. The clothes you design are so expensive, I can't afford them. You can just give me the sample clothes. That way, I won't have to buy clothes for Yi. Wahahaha, just thinking about it makes me excited. Xinyao looked at me with disdain and said, "Sister-in-law, you're so bad. You're so rich, but you're still complaining that you're poor. When we went shopping before we came back, you spent tens of thousands on Yi's things, and you still have the nerve to tell me that you don't have money. You're so bad." At this moment, the Red Baron interrupted. "Milady is right. She really doesn't have any money now. She just spent 10 million 2 days ago." When I heard the Red Baron say that, I quickly stopped her and told her to stop talking. The Red Baron looked at me helplessly and shook his head. 10 million? Sister-in-law, what are you doing? Buying a house or a piece of land? No. Are you planning to keep other beauties? You don't love me anymore. And you don't love the Red Baron anymore. Xinyao's imagination ran wild. I looked at Xinyao and shook my head awkwardly. Don't think too much. I still love you guys. I'm not keeping other girls, and I didn't spend that much money. Don't listen to the Red Baron's nonsense. Xinyao thought for a moment and said, "All right then. You guys talk. I'm going to take Yi to the bathroom." Then, Xinyao stood up and left with Yi in her arms. As soon as Xinyao left, Suri sat next to me. He looked at me with a serious face. Then, he glanced at the Red Baron and back at me. He asked softly, "Milady, do you know about the Kurosawa incident?" I was stunned for a moment. Then, I looked at Suri and nodded. Suri clenched his fists. He looked at me and said, "I knew it. Did you use the Red Minghue's funds to help the Kurosawa?" Before I could say anything, the Red Baron looked at Suri and said, "You're right. At first, she said she wanted to use 5 million. Later she used 10 million. When she gave me the money, I was stunned. I really don't know what she was thinking." I looked at Suri helplessly and smiled foolishly. I really didn't know how to explain it to him. Then, Suri looked at me and said softly, "Milady, are you crazy? If the president finds out that you used the Red Minghue's funds, he'll definitely be angry. Plus, you didn't use it for yourself. You used it to help the Kurosawa. The president will definitely be furious. Milady, you're playing with fire." I smiled bitterly and looked at Suri. I said softly, "But I love him. How can I reject this reason? It's not like you don't know what I'm thinking." Su Rue shook his head helplessly. He looked at Red Baron, then looked at me and said softly, "You two are too reckless. Forget it, the president will definitely find out after a long time. After we go back, Red Baron, let's think about what to do." At least we have to settle the account first. Chapter 204. Alright. Let's not talk about this for now. Xinyao is coming back soon. Seeing that the bathroom light had turned off, I quickly stopped talking. When Xinyao came back, we pretended as if nothing had happened and took a quick nap. When we woke up, there was less than an hour before the plane was due to depart. We tidied up a little and prepared to depart the plane. It felt different when I stepped on my own soil. I was worried that Yi's environment overseas would be different from that in China, so I carefully observed her. Fortunately, she seemed to be in high spirits. Perhaps it was because she was in an unfamiliar environment, but she seemed to find everything new. Looking around, I let out a long sigh of relief. When we left the airport, our family had already arranged for someone to pick us up. Suri and Xinyao did not go home with us, as they had returned to their own home. However, Suri told me that he would contact me in 2 days. It was probably about the money I had embezzled without permission. When we arrived home, our parents were already waiting at the door to welcome us. We exchanged a few simple greetings before we entered the living room. When we arrived home, Yi had already attracted everyone's attention, especially my father. My father was very happy when he hugged her. It seemed that they were still very close despite being generations apart. I did not want to disturb them, so I asked them to play with Yi downstairs while I went upstairs alone. When I returned to my bedroom, my mother had already arranged for the nanny to tidy up my bedroom. I lay on my bed and felt an inexplicable amount of pressure after coming back. The thing that filled my mind the most was probably Kurosawa and Duanmu Kei's matter. The Red Baron left as soon as she got off the plane because she knew the urgency of the matter. She was also afraid that I would be worried, so she might have gone to deal with it first. However, she should be back by now. As I had guessed correctly, there was a knock on my bedroom door. The Red Baron pushed the door open and entered. She looked at me and I looked at her. We looked at each other and smiled. The Red Baron sat on my bed and reached out her hand to stroke my hair gently. This was her signature gesture of doting on me. She knew that I was an insecure person and only a simple comforting gesture like this could calm my heart. The Red Baron looked at me and said, "Don't worry, I've already taken care of everything. The money has been directly financed into one of the Kurosawa's most unprofitable projects. I'm using my real name, so no one should be able to recognize me. The project should improve very quickly and solve some of the Kurosawa's problems. You don't have to worry." I nodded and leaned on her hand. "Thank you for your hard work. I can only rest assured if I leave this matter to you." The Red Baron looked at me and smiled. "Don't mind what Suri said. He's doing it for your own good. He doesn't want you to take on too much responsibility for others. It's a good thing that the president is very satisfied with you for the American project. In 2 days, Suri and I will come to the meeting to settle the debt. Then, everything will be fine. You should rest well and get used to the jet lag." I looked at the ceiling and sighed. How can I rest well? Alright, do you have any news about Duanmu Kei? How is he now? I guessed that you would ask about him. When I went there, I asked the secretary. Because of the internal disintegration and the outflow of shares, President Duanmu and his wife, as well as Duanmu Kei, have been keeping a low profile. There's no news about them anymore. However, I heard that they've been eating and living in the company. They haven't even returned home. I heard that they've been surrounded by reporters, so it's not convenient for them to show their faces. After hearing the Red Baron's words, I became even more worried. I thought for a moment and looked at the Red Baron. "Red Baron, can you help me arrange something? I want to see Xiao Quebec." The Red Baron lay down next to me. She looked at me and said, "My lady, don't cause trouble at this time. Their company is almost in lockdown. You actually want to see him at this time? You're really crazy. Listen to me. It's not convenient for you to see him at this time. But how can I be at ease when something like this happens? Dad's health is not good. How can he take such a huge blow?" I felt depressed. My mood was very gloomy. Indeed, no one would be happy if such a thing happened to them. I suddenly thought about it and said to the Red Baron, "How about this, you help me contact Han Hao. He should know that I'm back." The Red Baron looked at me and sighed. "All right, leave this to me." The Red Baron thought for a moment, then she took out a bank card from her handbag and handed it to me. She looked at me and said softly, "Take it. This is a little bit of my savings. I know that my savings are only the tip of the iceberg for the Kurosawa, but this is a small token of my sincerity. Don't touch the funds that you can use. If the chairman really finds out, I can't help you get away. Take it." I looked at the Red Baron in surprise. I took the bank card and asked her softly, "This is your savings. Why are you giving it to me? You have nothing to do with the Kurosawa." The Red Baron reached out and touched my face, and said softly, "Because you are the eldest young lady, you are my first friend. You have difficulties. As a subordinate, I have to help you out of my duty. As a friend, I also need to help out of friendship, don't I? You don't have to worry about it. I'll arrange a meeting with Han Hao for you." I hugged the Red Baron tightly. Actually, I knew that the money that the Red Baron gave me was the reward money that she had earned from every mission she completed since she started working for the Red Ming Hui. Although she earned a lot every month with her ability, it took a lot of determination to save up so much money. However, she gave me the money that she worked so hard to save up, which meant that she had to start all over again. My heart felt warm, and I was glad that I had made such a good friend. After chatting with the Red Baron for a while, the two of us went downstairs to prepare for dinner. When I went to the living room, I saw that my parents were still playing with E. E was really a good girl. She didn't cry or throw a tantrum even after playing with her parents for so long. I walked over and carried E into my arms. E leaned on my shoulder obediently. She was probably tired from playing, but she didn't feel tired because of her grandparents. I patted her back gently, and she fell asleep not long after leaning on my shoulder. I said goodbye to my parents and carried E back to her room. After I settled her down and waited for her to fall asleep, I went downstairs to eat with everyone in the living room. Chapter 205. It had been almost a week since I had stayed at home to adjust to the time difference. I had nowhere else to go, so I stayed at home obediently. It was only during the Red Ming Hui's regular meeting that I showed up. The elders in the meeting greeted me warmly when they saw me, and they all knew about E's situation. Everyone clamored for my father to throw a party so that everyone could see E. I was touched by everyone's enthusiasm. It was actually pretty good to be back. I could see everyone and feel the atmosphere of home. On a weekend afternoon, when I was at home taking care of E, the Red Baron walked in from outside. She sat next to me and hugged E. She gently kissed E on the cheek. She looked at me and said, "It's done." I was stunned for a moment. I thought about it for a while before I remembered that I had asked the Red Baron to arrange a meeting between Han Hao and me. I looked at the Red Baron and smiled. "Really? Thank you so much." The Red Baron looked at me and said, "Don't mention it. We've arranged to meet at Ming Fei Cafe at 7 p.m. tonight. I've checked it out for you. The environment is pretty good. Although there aren't many people, it's definitely safe." I nodded and looked at the Red Baron. "Okay, I understand." "Oh, right. What did you tell Xiao Hao?" "I called him and arranged to meet him. I told him that you're back. He was very surprised, but he agreed readily. After we met, I told him about you. Of course, I cleverly avoided talking about the Kurosawa. It wasn't appropriate for me to talk to him about this. You should talk to him about it." He agreed without thinking about anything. "I think he really wants to meet you. After all, it's been so long. But I can tell that Han Hao's feelings for you are still the same as before." I was stunned for a moment and sighed. "You know, I only have Duanmu K in my heart now. Although I'm very grateful to Han Hao, I can't be with him as a couple. I can't lie to my heart, and I can't lie to his feelings for me." The Red Baron put E down and looked at me. "Don't worry. I know your heart. I just want you to be mentally prepared. If Han Hao confesses to you, don't be shocked." I nodded. Right now, All I could think about was the Kurosawa issue. Tonight, I had to talk to Han Hao and discuss with him how to solve this issue. It was almost time for the appointment. I simply dressed up and handed to my parents. I told them that I had something to do and left. I drove to the cafe, but I didn't see Han Hao's car in the parking lot nearby. Maybe he changed his car or didn't drive here. I didn't know if he had arrived or not. I pushed the door open and walked into the cafe. The moment I entered, I saw Han Hao's figure. This place was indeed as Red Baron had described. The cafe's environment was very good and there weren't many people. Han Hao was sitting in a booth by the window. I looked at his side profile. He was still as gentle and handsome as before. I straightened my collar and walked over to Han Hao. When I reached his side, he turned his head and looked at me. He looked very surprised. Han Hao stood up and hugged me tightly before I could say anything. I couldn't see other people's gazes. I could only feel Han Hao's heartbeat. Han Hao hugged me tightly. He stuck close to me and said softly, "Xiao Li, you're finally back. You're finally willing to appear in front of me." I could feel his excitement. My heart was very uncomfortable. I reached out my hand and gently patted Han Hao's back. I softly said to him, I'm back. Xiao Hao, let me go first. Let's sit down and slowly talk. There's still plenty of time." Han Hao let go of me. He pulled out a chair for me to sit in like a gentleman. Then he sat opposite me and looked at me. His expression was very gentle. He looked at me and said, "Xiao Li, how are you? You disappeared for such a long time and didn't contact us. How are you doing?" "Oh, right. I heard from the Red Baron that you gave birth to a very cute baby. Why didn't you bring it over? Your baby must be as gentle and cute as you." I looked at Han Hao with a smile and said, "Yeah, I'm fine. It's because there's a project in America that needs to be carried out. I was preparing to give birth to a baby, so I took the project and went overseas with Red Baron. Because it took so long to complete the project, I came back after everything in America was done. The baby is very cute. Because she's still too young, it's not convenient to bring her out. So, I asked my parents to take care of her. I'll bring her out when I have the chance. When you come back, I'll bring it out." Han Hao looked at me. He paused for a while. Then, he looked at me and said, "Does Xiao Ke know that you're back? Does he know about you and the baby?" I shook my head and looked at Han Hao. "No, he doesn't know. I haven't looked for him in such a long time. He doesn't know anything about me. Now isn't the time to tell him. Let's wait for the opportunity in the future." "You know about his situation?" Han Hao looked at me in shock. It was as though I had found out about something very important. I nodded and looked at Han Hao. "Yes, I know. I came here today because of this. He must be under a lot of pressure right now. He definitely needs help right now. I came here to ask for your help. Let me have the opportunity to help him." Han Hao looked even more surprised. He looked at me and said, "How can you help? Xiao Ke didn't tell many people that he's getting married. You just came back to China. How did you know? Did Suri tell you? Why can't I help? Isn't it just marriage?" I didn't know what I was talking about. The cup in my hand fell to the ground. The waiter heard the noise and immediately ran over to take care of it. I stared at Han Hao. I didn't know how to describe my feelings. "Marriage?" Han Hao looked at me and asked, "Isn't it about the marriage? Is there anything else besides this?" I shook my head and looked at Han Hao. "No, it's about the Kurosawa internal problems. Someone stole the company's internal funds and privately transferred part of the company's shares to outsiders. Now, the Kurosawa is facing an economic crisis. I'm here because of this. I'm afraid that he can't handle it alone. That's why I want to help him." Han Hao whispered to me, "So it's about this. I thought you knew about Duanmu Kei's marriage. Xiao Li, listen to me. Pretend I didn't say anything. Pretend you didn't hear anything. Don't take it to heart. Chapter 206. What the hell is going on? I couldn't control my emotions and shouted. I didn't expect to attract the attention of the people around us. Han Hao looked at me and sighed. Shaoli, don't worry. I can tell you, but you must promise me that you will control your emotions. I nodded and looked at him, waiting for him to tell me what happened. Han Hao whispered to me, as you know, the Kurosawa is indeed in trouble. You should remember that Secretary Lee, right? Uncle Duanmu trusted her a lot and gave her the right to make decisions on small matters in the company. But who would have thought that she stole Uncle Duanmu's signature and seal, stole nearly half of the company's assets, and sold 35% of the company's shares to an outsider? Fortunately, the 35% shares were distributed among 5 people, so they weren't considered major shareholders of the company. Now, Uncle Duanmu is trying to find a way to get the shares back under his name. It's going pretty smoothly, and he's already gotten 4 shares back. However, the company's internal losses and the cost of getting the shares back have seriously affected the company's normal operations. But there's no other way. In order to appease everyone's emotions, Uncle Duanmu and Auntie Duanmu have to hold on. Xiao Ke has also suffered a lot. He sold his sports car collection, but that amount of money was nothing compared to the company's deficit. Originally, Uncle Duanmu wanted to sell the villa in the suburbs as well, but Xiao Ke didn't agree. He said that he didn't want to sell the memories he had with you, so he didn't sell it. Now, the company is still in a deficit, and we don't know when it will get better. A while ago, I heard from Xiao Ke that a stranger invested 10 million in a new project. For the time being, the new project can operate normally. I hope this new project can bring profits to the company. But what does this have to do with Duanmu Ke's marriage? Who knows when it might explode? Just when everyone was in a dilemma, this person who held 10% of the shares appeared. I heard that Uncle Duanmu had told that person about his idea at the time, but that person had no intention of returning the shares to his father. Instead, he brought up the matter of a marriage, and even told Uncle Duanmu that he would invest another 50 million to restore the Black Nightmare Society's finances. If the marriage were to happen, not only would the shares be returned to his own hands, he would also be able to obtain an investment of 50 million. The pressure on the Black Nightmare Society would be greatly alleviated in an instant. In the face of such a huge benefit, Uncle Duanmu agreed without a second word. Little K, on the other hand, had been strongly opposed to this from the very beginning. But as you know, opposition is ineffective. How could he possibly fight against Uncle Duanmu? Up until now, he's been grounded at home by Uncle Duanmu. I've only gone over to see him occasionally. He's completely dispirited, cooped up at home all day, not going anywhere. I've once asked Uncle Duanmu to take little K out to play, but Uncle Duanmu didn't agree at all. There was nothing I could do, so I could only keep quiet. After listening to Han Hao's words, I smiled bitterly. I lowered my head and looked at Han Hao. What kind of person is the woman? She's a rich second generation. I heard that her father, the one who owns the shares, is a nouveau riche. He suddenly became rich and now he's in the real estate business. The woman doesn't do anything but stay at home. But I heard that she's very pretty. I thought for a moment and nodded. Forget it. She's not bad. She's a good match for Xiao Quebec. I suddenly thought of something and took out the 5 million yuan bank card that the Red Baron had given me from my bag. I also took out the 5 million yuan that I had saved and put them together. I put the bank card on the table and handed it to Han Hao. I looked at him and said, "Take this money and give it to Duanmu Quebec. His company is in such a big trouble and I can't use the company's funds to help him. This is a little bit of my savings and the Red Baron's savings. Take it. I'm not feeling too well and I'm a little worried about E. I'll go back first. If you have anything to say, I'll talk to you later." Then, I stood up and walked out of the coffee shop. I didn't know how I walked out. I felt like I was floating. Suddenly, my legs gave way and I almost fell to the ground. Suddenly, someone reached out and pulled me into an embrace. I looked up and saw that it was Han Hao. He hugged me tightly and whispered, "Are you hurt anywhere? Why were you so careless? Why were you in such a hurry to leave?" I pushed Han Hao away and whispered, "I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm leaving." I pushed Han Hao away and turned to leave. But I didn't expect Han Hao to pull me into his embrace again. This time, I didn't avoid him. I grabbed his clothes and leaned against his chest and cried. The two of us hugged each other for a while. We couldn't feel the gazes of the people around us anymore. Han Hao hugged me and stroked my hair gently. "Xiao Li, don't cry. I know you're sad. Don't be afraid. You still have me. Don't cry. I'm sad too." Han Hao hugged me and listened to his comforting words. I cried even harder. Han Hao comforted me for a while and drove me home. On the way home, the two of us didn't say a word. Han Hao probably understood my feelings. He was afraid that if he said too much, he would hurt my heart. When we reached the door, I got out of the car and walked into the living room. I didn't care if Han Hao stayed or left. Han Hao followed behind me. I walked past the living room and went upstairs. I didn't even talk to the Red Baron who was sitting in the living room. I went into the bedroom and saw Yi sleeping soundly on the bed. I lay down beside her and gently stroked her body. My tears couldn't stop flowing again. I never thought that the vows we once made would no longer exist. I thought he would wait for me, but he went back on his words. I came back for him, but just when I was looking forward to getting back together with him, he had already chosen someone else. Where should my heart go? Just as I was crying my heart out, I didn't expect Yi to wake me up. She saw that I was crying and she turned over to face me. She reached out her small hand and wiped the tears off my face. Then, she said to me in a childish voice, "Mommy, don't cry. Yi, stay with Mommy." Hearing her words, I was already sobbing my heart out. Chapter 207. Just as I was crying in Yi's arms, the bedroom door was pushed open. The Red Baron and Han Hao walked in. She looked at me crying and sighed. Then, she picked Yi up from my arms. She hugged the Red Baron and said softly, "Auntie Red Baron, Mommy is crying. Yi wants to be with Mommy." The Red Baron gently stroked Yi's back and said to her, "Yi, be good. Auntie Red Baron will take you to Grandma's, okay? Grandma bought many beautiful little clothes for Yi. Yi will definitely like them." Then, the Red Baron carried Yi out of the bedroom. Only Han Hao and I were left in the bedroom. Because Han Hao was there, it wasn't convenient for me to continue lying down. I walked to the bedroom window and looked out. I couldn't calm down. Han Hao walked to my side and reached out to hug me. I tried to break free, but he hugged me tightly. I knew that it was useless to struggle. I could only lean into his embrace, my heart aching. Han Hao gently stroked my hair and said to me, "Xiao Li, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have told you this, but I don't want you to be hurt. You still have feelings for Xiao Quebec. You brought the baby back this time because you wanted to mend your relationship with him. But is it worth it? Xiao Li, is it worth it? He has already given up resisting and decided to marry that woman. Do you think it's appropriate for you to appear as his ex-wife? Xiao Li, I can't bear to see you suffer like this. Seeing you like this makes my heart ache too." I shook my head and said to Han Hao, "I understand what you mean. I don't have any other thoughts now. I just want to see him, even if it's just once from afar. Is that okay? Xiao Hao, I'm counting on you." Han Hao suddenly patted my shoulder and looked at me. "Xiao Li, you don't need to ask me. Once, twice, or even more times, my answer will be the same. I won't be an accomplice to hurt your heart. Never. In the past, I didn't care what you said or did, and even helped you. But this time, it's different. I won't let you do whatever you want. So, Cold Glaze, from now on, you are my woman. I won't allow you to think about any man other than me. This is not a negotiation, this is my decision. You have no right to object because you are mine." Before I could object, Han Hao held my face and kissed me deeply. I resisted, but he was too strong. It was the first time I felt that Han Hao was so strong. He held my waist tightly and his kiss wandered on my lips. My heart raced and my face burned. My body became weaker and weaker. I leaned against the wall, but Han Hao still didn't let go of me. He kissed me even more fiercely. Unconsciously, I gradually gave up resisting and put my hands on his shoulders to feel his kiss. After a while, Han Hao finally let go of me. My heart was still beating very fast. I didn't know what to do. I leaned against the wall and didn't dare to look at him. I could feel my face blushing. The atmosphere must have been very awkward. Han Hao looked at me and reached out to touch my face. He said softly, "Look at how good you are now. You look like a little girl in love. I like you the way you are now. That crying face really doesn't suit you." I was stunned. I raised my head and looked at Han Hao. "What did you say? Did you do what you did just now just to make me forget about it?" Han Hao looked at me and smiled. He held my face and kissed my lips again. He said softly, "No, I really want you to be my woman. You don't have the chance to object now. You are mine." My heart was beating even faster. Han Hao hugged me and gently stroked my hair. "Silly, don't worry. You are mine. I will treat you well. I hope you won't reject me. This time, I can guarantee that you won't reject me. Don't worry, I will give you time. But this time, I will give you a deadline. If you don't call, then don't call." I thought for a while and looked at Han Hao. I nodded. Han Hao held my face again and kissed me gently. Then, he left, leaving me alone in the bedroom. If I didn't have any feelings for Han Hao, why didn't I resist when Han Hao kissed me? Instead, the feeling was very strong, as if I was about to fall into his hands. What should I do? I suddenly didn't know what to do. Just as I was feeling conflicted, the Red Baron walked in from outside. She stood at the door and looked at me. She couldn't help but smile. I looked at the Red Baron and asked, "What? Why are you smiling so happily?" The Red Baron walked to my side. She reached out and tidied my collar. She smiled and said, "It seems like nothing happened. But looking at your rosy cheeks, I guess you are in a good mood. It seems that only Han Hao can cure you. But I am relieved." I pursed my lips and looked at the Red Baron. "What happened?" "Nothing happened. How can he cure me? I didn't do anything wrong. Why does he have to cure me?" I felt that I was starting to speak incoherently. The Red Baron looked at me and said, all right. Whatever you say. But this time, I really have to talk to you. You shouldn't cry in front of E. You are E's pillar. If you fall, what will happen to E? Isn't that right?" "Fortunately, E is obedient. You are not as sensible as E. Also, I heard about Douanmu Quebec. Since he has already chosen to marry that woman, you should stop fantasizing about him. Compared to him, I think Han Hao is much better. You should think about it carefully." As the Red Baron and I were chatting, the housekeeper knocked on the bedroom door and said that Suri and Xinyao had come. Before I could say anything about going downstairs to welcome them, Xinyao had already rushed into my bedroom and threw herself in front of me. Xinyao hugged me and said loudly, "Sister-in-law, I have some bad news for you. You have to hold on." I turned my head to look at Xinyao and sighed. "I know what's going on. Your brother's matter, I already know." "Ah. Is it about my brother's marriage? Sister-in-law, how did you know?" "Did Suri tell you? That can't be. Did the Red Baron tell you? That can't be. She doesn't care about these things." "Sister-in-law, how did you know?" "Han Hao told me. He just came by." I looked at Xinyao. Chapter 208. Xinyao nodded thoughtfully. "All right," she said softly. "Sister-in-law, you have to hold on. Don't be angry." I smiled and looked at Xinyao and said, "It's nothing. The two of us are already divorced, so there's no relationship between us. What's there to be angry about?" As I said this, I suddenly felt a burst of pain in my heart. At this moment, Suri walked in and looked at me. "Miss, Xinyao has already tried to contact Duanmu K, but she couldn't reach him on his phone. He wasn't at home either. She even searched all the places he frequented, but she couldn't find him. Later, Xinyao went to ask her parents and found out that her father had grounded Duanmu, Quebec. He didn't tell anyone because he was afraid that someone would leak the news. He had been resisting before, but now he's not resisting and has even agreed to it. It's just that he hasn't shown up in public yet. I sighed and looked at Xinyao and Suri. Yeah, it's fine. I got it. It's all in the past. Xinyao reached out and hugged me. Sister-in-law, what are you going to do next? She asked softly. I thought for a moment and asked Xinyao, when is your brother's engagement party? Xinyao thought for a moment and said, Sister-in-law, it's the beginning of next month. Are you going to attend? I looked at the calendar. It's still early, so we'll talk about it when the time comes. For now, I just want to spend some quiet time with E. I don't want to think about anything else. The way things are now is pretty good. He's living his life, and I'm living mine. I don't need to let Duanmu K know about E's existence. If he finds out that he has a child, it might cause problems for his life. I don't want that to happen. But isn't E so pitiful? Her father is clearly not far away, but she can't acknowledge him. When E grows up, she might not accept her brother. This is too unfair to E. No, sister-in-law. You must talk to my brother about this. I shook my head and looked at Xinyao. No, I can't tell him. Also, there's no need to tell him. I've already decided to choose someone, so there's no need to tell him. So, you don't need to worry about it. You just need to sincerely bless my life. Suri and Xinyao looked at each other, then looked at me and said, Sister-in-law, did you find Prince Charming? Who is it? Do I know him? At this moment, the Red Baron smiled and said, Isn't that so? Missy has decided to be with Han Hao. And she just made the decision. In the face of the Red Baron who was constantly undermining me, I was speechless. I could only smile and nod in agreement. Oh my God, sister-in-law, you've decided to be with Gij Han Hao? Although I still want you to be with Gij, I think it would be good for you to be with Gij Han Hao. Since you've already chosen Han Hao, Suri and I will definitely support you, right, hubby? Xinyao turned her head and asked Suri. Suri thought for a moment, then looked at me and said, Missy, you can do whatever you want. I will definitely support you. Just don't let yourself suffer. Han Hao is not bad. As for you and Duanmu K, I can only say that the two of you are not fated to be together. I smiled and nodded, then looked at them and said, All right, it's all in the past. Don't think too much about it. Aren't I fine now? Xinyao looked at me and patted my head, saying, As long as sister-in-law is fine, it's fine. I'm on your side. Actually, I've heard about the Kurosawa situation recently. I didn't expect that Secretary Lee to be like that, causing so many problems for us. Father, mother, and brother were all busy dealing with this matter, but then that person threatened them with a marriage alliance. Sister-in-law, you have to believe that brother definitely didn't want to. It was only because of father that he had no choice but to marry her. I believe that he still has you in his heart. After chatting with them briefly, Suri and Xinyao stayed at my house for dinner and then left. After lunch, I took E for a stroll in the garden. When we got home, the task of taking care of the roses in the garden fell to me. I was very happy to do so. E liked this kind of life very much. She was still young and it was going to be her 3rd birthday soon. Just in time for her to return to China, I decided to throw a birthday party for her. It was also to let the members of the Red Minghui know of her existence. Ever since I found out that the Duanmu K was going to remarry, I decided to let E participate in the Red Minghui's affairs in the future. No matter what, the Duanmu K was going to get married, so he definitely wouldn't come back to look for us. It was better to be strong in her heart. So what if she had to raise the baby by herself? E was so obedient, she wouldn't make me unhappy. I put E on the ground and she played by the side of the garden. She ran around, but she didn't wander off. She stayed within my line of sight. This was also what I had taught her since she was young. Although she was young, she understood. As I was playing with E, my phone suddenly rang. I picked it up and saw that it was a message from Han Hao. He wrote, "What are you doing? I'm guessing that you're taking E for a stroll in the garden right now." I looked around and didn't see any cameras around. I replied, "Did you install cameras in my house? How did you know what I was doing?" "Because we have telepathy." I received Han Hao's instant reply. Looking at his message, I smiled and glanced at E. She was still running around in the garden. I didn't reply to Han Hao's message. Actually, I didn't know whether I should accept him or reject him. My subconscious already knew that I still had some feelings for Han Hao. Just as my thoughts were running wild, my phone rang. I picked it up and saw that it was Han Hao. Just as I was about to answer the call, E ran over. She tugged on my skirt and looked at me. "Mummy, let me answer it. Let me answer it, okay?" I was stunned for a moment, but I still handed the phone to E. E took the phone and answered the call. "Hello, I'm E. It's E. Do you know who I am? I'm Uncle Han Hao." I heard Han Hao's voice. "Hello, Uncle Han Hao." E greeted him politely. "Hello, E. E, can you give the phone to Mummy and let Mummy talk?" Han Hao's tone was very gentle. E shook her head and said, "No, Uncle, you can talk to me." I was stunned by E's answer and couldn't help but laugh. Han Hao probably didn't expect E to answer him like that. I was also looking forward to seeing how Han Hao would respond. Chapter 209. After a while, Han Hao's voice came from the other end of the line. "E, since you came here, you haven't been to an amusement park, have you? There are a lot of fun things to do there, and there are a lot of children around E's age. Uncle can take E to the amusement park to play. E, do you want to go?" Yes, E wants to go." Unexpectedly, E agreed quickly. Han Hao continued, "Then E has to be a good girl and let Mommy talk, okay?" E nodded furiously. She held the phone in front of me and said anxiously, "Mommy, hurry up and pick up the phone." I nodded awkwardly and picked E up and took the phone. "You're quite good at coaxing children. E is so smart, yet you managed to coax her." I didn't know why, but Han Hao was so gentle to E, which made me quite happy. Han Hao said softly, "Haha, of course. Don't all children like amusement parks? Even though I've only met E once, I like her a lot." "So what you said just now was just to coax her, or are you really going to take her to the amusement park?" "Of course, I'm a man of my word. You don't have to count the days. Just tomorrow. I've checked the weather, and it's sunny. The temperature isn't too high either, so it's just right for a trip. You don't have to prepare anything, just bring everything E needs. I'll come pick you up at 8 tomorrow morning, and we'll play for a day. If you're tired, there's a place nearby where you can rest. Don't worry, I've thought everything through." Hearing Han Hao's words, I was stunned. Could it be that he had been planning this for a long time? "Xiao Hao, you haven't been planning this for a long time, have you?" "It doesn't take a long time. When I saw E, I thought she was very cute. You don't usually want to go anywhere, so I thought I'd take her. Of course, I'll take you too." It seemed that his plan was very thorough. I nodded and said, "All right, thank you in advance. Ever since I came back, I really haven't taken E anywhere to play. It's my fault for neglecting her. Thank you for thinking of me. Xiao Li, you don't have to be polite with me. I've already said that I'll definitely make you my woman. If you become my woman, then E will be my child. Of course, I'll treat her well. You don't have to think about it. Rest well tonight. I'll pick you up tomorrow." Then, Han Hao hung up the phone. I hugged E and E looked at me and whispered, "Mummy, is that uncle going to take us to the amusement park?" I hugged E and kissed her on the cheek. "Yeah, take E to play with that uncle tomorrow. That uncle will like E a lot. E has to like him too, okay? If Mummy likes him, then I'll like him too. E hugged me and kissed me back. E's words reminded me that maybe I really should let go of Duanmu K and accept Han Hao's love for me. He was a man I deserved. Now that I had nothing to worry about, it was time for me to pursue my own happiness. The next day, Han Hao appeared at my door early in the morning. When I carried E out, I saw that he was dressed very casually. He wore a white t-shirt, denim shorts, and skateboard shoes. He looked very youthful. Because I was going to take E out to play, I was dressed very casually. I didn't know when E would be carried, so it wasn't convenient for me to wear a skirt. When Han Hao saw that I was carrying a big bag, he quickly walked over to me and took the bag. Then, he quickly walked to the back seat and opened the door. Only then did I see that he had already placed a child seat in the back seat of his car. I raised my head and looked at him in disbelief. He smiled happily. I smiled and placed E in the child seat. Then, I sat in the front passenger seat. We started the journey to the amusement park. After driving for a while, I whispered to him, "Why did you want to install a child seat?" "Because I wanted to take E out to play, so I took the time to buy one. It just so happens that I'll be using it today. It seems that I've been quite proactive. Thank you for the trouble." I was very grateful to Han Hao. If Han Hao was doing all this to please me, then I was very happy. At least he didn't just love me, he also loved E. Just as my imagination was running wild, Han Hao whispered to me, "Oh right, Xiao Li, there's a black handbag on the back seat. There's a can of milk powder and a pot of boiling hot water. I bought the milk powder from an imported supplies store. My friend recommended it and said that it's good for children to drink, so I bought it. But there needs to be hot water, so I brought some hot water with me this morning. Oh, right, there's a milk bottle too. They're all in that bag. Open it up and take a look." Hearing Han Hao say this, I reached out and took the black handbag he was talking about. I opened it up and saw that it really was full of baby supplies. Han Hao drove very steadily, so it shouldn't be a problem to make milk powder in the car. I took out the milk bottle and poured some milk powder and some hot water. Because I couldn't let E drink too hot, I tried my best to control the temperature suitable for her. It took me a long time to adjust the temperature, but I didn't notice at all. While I was focused on making the milk for E, Han Hao was also paying attention to me. I turned around and handed the milk bottle to E. She took the bottle and drank it in big gulps. After watching for a while, I was sure that she was fine, so I turned back. At this time, Han Hao looked at me and said, "Xiao Li, is it so troublesome to make milk powder for the baby?" I nodded and said to him, "This is considered the simplest. But when E was young, it was really difficult. But it's all good now. E can eat with a spoon by herself now, and she can tell me when she needs to go to the bathroom. It's a lot easier." At this time, Han Hao sighed and said softly to me, "Xiao Li, it's been hard on you. I'm very sorry that I wasn't by your side when you were at your toughest. But it's all good now. I can always be by your side. In the future, you can leave the matter of taking care of E to me." Hearing Han Hao say this, I felt very touched. I smiled and asked, "You've never taken care of a baby before. Do you know how to take care of a baby?" "I can learn this slowly. When you mixed the milk powder just now, I already knew how to do it. I just don't know what's the right temperature for the baby. When we get there, I'll go online and look it up. I'll also learn how to take care of the baby today. I'll try my best to make it easier for you. Xiao Li, don't feel pressured. I'll take care of you in the future." Chapter 210. I didn't know why, but when I looked at Han Hao, I suddenly felt that he was different from before. In the past, he had been unwilling to participate in anything, but now he had a sense of responsibility. In my eyes, he was no longer the child who could only endure silently. He had grown up, and I was glad. I hoped that I had made the right choice. I hoped that he could give E and me a happy and warm family. When we arrived at the parking lot of the amusement park, Han Hao parked the car. He got out of the car and put all the things he had prepared into his backpack. Then, he put the backpack on, opened the door to the back seat, and carried E. E must have fallen asleep after drinking the milk. She might have just woken up when Han Hao carried her. She still looked sleepy as she lay on Han Hao's shoulder, her small hands tightly wrapped around his neck. When I got out of the car, I happened to see this scene. I was very glad. This scene was just like a father carrying his daughter. It was a very heartwarming scene. Han Hao carried Yi and walked in front of me. He looked at the dazed me and asked, "What are you thinking about?" "Let's go. We should go in." Then, Han Hao extended his hand in front of me. He looked at me with a smile, indicating that he wanted me to hold his hand. I hesitated for a moment, but still reached out and held his hand. His hand was very warm. Han Hao's smile became even brighter. He held my hand and carried Yi in his other hand. We walked towards the entrance of the amusement park. After completing the entry procedures, we walked into the amusement park. I saw that Han Hao's backpack was too big, so after we entered the park, I rented a sightseeing car. Yi was fine too. Han Hao was in charge of driving while I carried Yi and sat next to him. We chatted and laughed along the way. Han Hao told me a lot of interesting things that had happened in the past 2 years, and I also told him about Yi's childhood. If there was a place that Yi liked along the way, we would stop and play with Yi. As soon as we got out of the car, Han Hao would not let me carry the baby. He would carry Yi and play with Yi. I would just stand nearby and take photos of them and watch them play. When we needed to walk, Han Hao would carry Yi with one hand and hold my hand with the other. It really looked like a family of 3 in an amusement park. When we walked to places with many people, many passers-by would exclaim when they saw us, "Look at how sweet that family of 3 is. Yeah, the man is so handsome, the woman is so beautiful, and the baby is so cute. What a happy family." The people around us all looked at us with envy. I blushed and whispered to Han Hao, "Xiao Hao, isn't this not very good? You're not married yet. It's not good for people to talk about you like this." Han Hao suddenly stopped and looked around at the people around us. Then, he lowered his head to look at me and smiled. He suddenly cupped my face and kissed me deeply on the lips. I was stunned by his sudden kiss and couldn't react. Han Hao's action caused the people around us to cheer. I blushed even harder and quickly pushed Han Hao away. Han Hao looked at me with a smile and reached out to pull me into his arms. The people around us sighed again. I had no choice but to lower my head and lean against Han Hao's chest. Han Hao hugged me with one hand and held me with the other. Even if I didn't see this scene, I knew it would be beautiful. After a while, Han Hao let go of me. He looked at me with a proud expression, as if he had won a battle. I blushed and lowered my head. There are so many people here. This is not good. Everyone is laughing at us. Is it? I feel like they're looking at us with envy. Moreover, didn't a lot of people say that we're a good match? Don't say that they're lying. Strangers' words shouldn't be lies. Han Hao blocked my rebuttal. I didn't even have the slightest leeway to refute. While the two of us were chatting, a man walked over from not too far away. He looked at me and Han Hao and greeted us with a smile. "Hello, I'm a photographer. I just happened to see the two of you being so sweet. I was attracted by your love and couldn't help but press the shutter. These are the photos I just took. I'll give them to you." I looked at the picture. It was a picture of Han Hao holding my face and kissing me. I blushed even harder. I looked at the man and said, "How can you do this? Secretly take pictures of other people. I don't want the picture. Hurry up and destroy it." I knew that I was just looking for an excuse to comfort myself. Han Hao stood in front of me and smiled at the man. He reached out and took the picture. "Not bad. Thank you. I will treasure this. By the way, can I trouble you to take another picture of our family of 3? My wife is a bit shy, so I will have to trouble you." The man was surprised, but then he nodded in agreement. Han Hao put his arm around my shoulder and stood there looking at the camera. I looked at Han Hao with an embarrassed face and said in a low voice, "Xiao Hao, what are you doing? Hurry up and explain to him that we are not a family. People have misunderstood us, and you still want to take pictures. What do you want? Han Hao didn't look at me. He smiled at the camera and said, "Be good. Just think of it as accompanying me to take a picture. Look at the camera." I didn't argue. I turned my head and looked at the camera. Just like that, Han Hao and I took another picture together. Although I didn't know why I did it, I couldn't refuse. After walking around half of the amusement park, it was almost lunchtime. Han Hao had already prepared everything. He had prepared a picnic cloth and a variety of snacks. We chose a patch of grass that didn't have direct sunlight and had good air circulation. Han Hao had prepared many snacks, all of which were my favorite. Han Hao had just finished his work when he took Yi from my arms and a milk bottle from his bag. He squeezed out a little and tasted it before feeding Yi. He looked at my worried face and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, I've kept this milk in an incubator. The temperature hasn't changed. I just tested it, and it's just right for the baby. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Oh, by the way, I also prepared osmanthus cake for you. It's your favorite. Eat more." After he finished speaking, Han Hao took out a paper box from his bag. He opened it and saw osmanthus cake inside. It wasn't the kind that could be bought outside. It was obviously handmade. I looked up at Han Hao. He was holding Yi and comforting her while holding the milk bottle so that she wouldn't choke on the milk. He looked even more professional than me. I said to Han Hao, "Xiao Hao, you like Yi a lot, don't you?" Chapter 2:11. As Han Hao comforted Yi, he looked at me and said, "Of course. Yi is so cute. You know, this is my first time taking care of a child. I thought it would be difficult for Yi, but I was wrong. Yi and I hit it off very well. I like Yi very much." I reached out to take the photo and looked at it again and again. From a stranger's point of view, Han Hao, Yi, and I really looked like a family. Was this a hint to me? Seeing that Han Hao was really good to Yi, I was very comforted. I looked at Han Hao and said softly, "Xiao Hao, I have something to tell you." Han Hao hugged Yi and said softly, Tell me. What is it?" I glanced at Yi. She had just finished drinking milk and was a little sleepy. She lay in Han Hao's arms and closed her eyes. She looked like she had fallen asleep. I looked at Han Hao and thought for a moment. "Do you want to take care of Yi? What I mean is, do you want to take care of Yi with me?" "Of course I do. I like Yi. I will definitely take care of her." Han Hao was halfway through his sentence when he seemed to understand something. He suddenly looked at me in surprise and said, "Xiao Li, you agree? You agree to be with me?" My face was very red. I nodded and said softly to him, I agree to be with you. This time, I will not be with you as a friend. I will be with you as your girlfriend. Are you willing?" "I am willing. Xiao Li, I am willing. I have been waiting for this answer for too long. But now, it is all worth it because I have been waiting for it." I saw tears in Han Hao's eyes. I had never doubted his feelings for me. I moved closer to him and looked at Yi, who was sleeping soundly in his arms. Then, I raised my head and looked at him. I reached out and touched his face gently. I kissed him on the cheek and hugged his neck. Leaning on his shoulder, my heart suddenly calmed down. It was as if I had found comfort and found a harbor. Yi was sleeping soundly in Han Hao's arms. Since it was Han Hao's first time taking care of a child, I was afraid that the same posture would make him uncomfortable, so I pushed the pram over and carried Yi into the pram. The little girl slept soundly after eating and drinking her fill. She just turned over and continued to sleep. I leaned against the tree and prepared to feel the cool breeze. Han Hao lay on my lap and closed his eyes, falling asleep as well. I gently stroked his face. It was the first time I looked at him like this, and I realized that Han Hao was really handsome. His looks didn't lose out to those celebrities at all. His skin was very white, and he was very good at dressing. His figure was also very good. No matter how I looked at him, I felt that he was a perfect man. Perhaps it was because he had taken care of the child for the whole morning, but he slept soundly. I was also very happy to see him sleeping soundly, and I felt that my mood was completely different. If love was that simple, then my love for Han Hao had already sprouted in my heart, but I had never admitted it. Han Hao slept for an hour before he woke up. I watched him sleep for an hour, but it didn't feel like a long time had passed. When he woke up, he got up and hugged me in his arms. He kissed me gently. I hadn't felt this kind of affection for a long time. We packed up and continued to walk around with E. There was still half of the amusement park we hadn't visited yet. More and more people came to play. After walking for a while, we arrived at a row of shooting dolls. A shop owner stood in front of his shop and said loudly, "Come and take a look. Today's shooting event has a big discount. If you hit 10 bullets in a row, you'll win the grand prize. If you hit 20 bullets in a row, you'll win the grand prize." I turned my head and glanced at his shop. The grand prize was a human-sized doll, and the grand prize was a luxurious mage meal for two. It seemed that the shop owner had spent a lot of money in order to make money. As soon as we arrived in front of his shop, the shop owner rushed in front of us and stopped us. He looked at us and said, "Hey, handsome, do you want to give your wife and child a grand prize? Your baby is so cute. Come and have a try." I knew that this was the shop owner's marketing strategy. I pulled Han Hao's shirt and asked him not to participate. Han Hao smiled and looked at me. Then, he looked at the shop owner and said, "If I hit 20 bullets in a row, the grand prize and the grand prize will be mine, right?" The shop owner was bewildered. Then, he looked at Han Hao and said, "Of course. If you can hit 20 bullets in a row, they'll all be yours." I glanced at the shop owner. His eyes were evil. At first glance, I knew there was a problem. I didn't want Han Hao to be fooled, but Han Hao just smiled at me and took out the money. I pushed E to the station and looked at Han Hao. The shop owner handed him a gun. Han Hao didn't shoot straight away. Instead, he took the gun and studied it carefully. Although it was just a normal air gun, Han Hao's movements were so professional. After checking it, Han Hao looked at the shop owner and signaled that he could start shooting. After the shop owner was ready, Han Hao held the gun and stood 1 meter behind the shooting line to shoot. This was because many players would choose to sit and shoot from the shooting line. Only Han Hao would choose to shoot from a meter away. Not only was the shop owner stunned, but I was also stunned. While I was in a daze, Han Hao had already shot 5 bullets in a row, and every one of them hit. More and more people were watching. I didn't know that Han Hao was so good at this. I became more and more nervous. Seeing the 6th and 7th shots hit, I became even more nervous. Finally, when the 10th shot hit the bullseye, I couldn't help but scream. Han Hao put down the gun and looked at me with a smile. He pointed at his face. He wanted me to kiss him. My face was red. I walked up to him and kissed him softly. At this time, the shop owner's face didn't look good. He handed the doll to Han Hao, then looked at him and asked, "Do you want to continue with the 20-shot challenge?" Han Hao nodded and said softly, "Of course. My daughter's gift is in my hands, but my wife's gift isn't in my hands yet." The shop owner gestured for him to continue shooting. Han Hao handed the doll back to me and raised the gun again to aim at the bullseye. The first 2 shots were successful, but when Han Hao hit the 13th bullet, he missed the target. The people around us sighed. I looked at Han Hao and saw that his expression had become very serious. I was worried that he would be angry. I walked up to him and said softly, "Xiao Hao, don't be angry. How about we stop fighting and let's go? Yi's gift is already in her hands." Chapter 212. At this time, the boss looked at Han Hao with a proud face and said, "How was it? Young man, you missed the target. Do you want to continue?" Looking at his expression, it was clear that he had done something. I was a bit angry. I was about to argue with him, but Han Hao stopped me. Han Hao took out 100 yuan from his pocket and handed it to the boss. Han Hao smiled and said, "Just now, it was indeed my mistake. This time, it won't happen again." I still want to continue to challenge 20 consecutive shots. I also want everyone here to be my witness. If during this time, someone deliberately made mistake, I also want everyone to be my witness. Since Han Hao said this, it was clear that he already knew that the boss had done something. Many people present agreed in unison that Han Hao would be his witness. I looked at the boss and saw that his expression wasn't very good. I looked at Han Hao and was still worried about him. In fact, it didn't really matter if he ate a big meal or not. I just didn't want him to suffer this kind of grievance. Han Hao also realized that I was worried about him. He walked in front of me and gently patted my head and smiled at me. I didn't dare to give him too much pressure. I could only stand by his side and silently accompany him in my heart. Han Hao raised the gun and aimed at the bullseye. He calmed himself down and started a new round of shooting. I was very nervous. I didn't know what would happen to him. I only hoped that he would try his best. I didn't want him to be unhappy just because of me. While my thoughts were running wild, he had already shot the 10th shot. Seeing that the number of shots that went wrong was about to reach, Han Hao continued to shoot the 11th and 12th shot. Suddenly, Han Hao changed his hand and aimed with his left eye. I suddenly had a question. Han Hao wasn't left-handed. Wasn't it obvious that he was going to lose? But I was wrong. He actually hit the 13th shot. Everyone present was stunned, including the boss. Han Hao then shot the 14th shot with his left hand and hit the target again. The scene was filled with cheers. At this moment, Han Hao glanced at the boss and sneered. He switched the gun back to shooting with his right hand. Just like that, there was only one shot left. The surroundings suddenly became very quiet. Everyone was looking forward to the 20th shot. At this moment, Han Hao walked to the boss and said something. The boss's expression became very surprised. Han Hao walked back to his original position and beautifully shot the last bullet. The scene was filled with cheers. Only the boss was left paralyzed on the ground with an expression of disbelief. I walked to Han Hao's side and hugged him tightly. Han Hao gently stroked my hair and said softly, "Silly, I made you worry. Be good. It's over. Let's take the prize and leave." I nodded and looked at Han Hao. He smiled brightly. Han Hao walked to the boss and looked at him with a smile. The boss reluctantly handed the French meal voucher to Han Hao. Han Hao thanked the surrounding people who had helped to witness this. Then, he walked to my side. He pushed Yi's cart, and I held his arm as we left the crowd. Han Hao seemed to be in a good mood. He placed the big doll on the cart so that it wouldn't take up too much space. However, my mood was very complicated. I thought that the boss seemed to be a very serious person. He definitely wouldn't let Han Hao and me off that easily. It should be because of what Han Hao had said to the boss that he didn't do anything to Han Hao. Han Hao seemed to see my nervousness. Han Hao looked at me and said softly, "Dear, what are you thinking about? Why are you so engrossed in your thoughts?" I looked at Han Hao and asked, "I'm still thinking about what just happened. What did you say to the boss?" His expression suddenly became very surprised. What was going on? At that time, I was really scared. Han Hao looked at me and said softly, "It's very simple. The first time I shot, I felt that the first 10 shots were very smooth. By the time I shot the 11th and 12th shots, the gun was a little shaky. It was as if there was something wrong with the gun, so the first time I shot the 13th shot, I missed. After I shot the remaining 7 shots, it was obvious that I didn't have that feeling. At that time, I observed the boss. When I shot the 13th shot, his hand was in his pocket, so there must be some kind of device in there. That's why I missed. When I shot the second time, he tried to do something to that place again, but this time he made a mistake. I changed my hand and held the gun very steadily, and I got a very good result. He almost couldn't control his emotions anymore, so I walked up to him and told him that I already knew his secret. If he continued to act like this, I would expose his scheme in front of everyone, and he wouldn't be able to continue operating here anymore. When the boss heard my threat, he simply stopped trying to do anything to me. Han Hao sighed and said, "What happened was very simple. When I shot the 13th shot, I clearly felt that the first 10 shots were very smooth. So, after you changed your hand, why did you change your hand again? You changed it back and forth 2 or 3 times. I still didn't understand. Han Hao smiled and said, because I was just putting on a show. I haven't used both hands in a long time. Although I'm a little rusty, the results are pretty good. I'm very satisfied, so I'm in a very good mood right now. Han Hao's smile was very bright. So you knew how to do it before? But why are you so good at it? Well, it's kind of my hobby. When I was 15, I started researching equipment. If I told you that I did it for work, you wouldn't believe me, but Suri and I are actually quite similar. I'm more like Xiao Kei's personal bodyguard. Although Xiao Kei and I are good friends who grew up together, we have different statuses. So, when I'm with Xiao Kei, I'll carry a gun on me. Of course, I won't let you guys find out. I also have a gun in my car, and I have a gun workshop at home. So, things like air guns are considered child's play for me. Hearing Han Hao's words, I was a little surprised. I didn't expect him to be doing something so dangerous, but I felt even more pity for him. I pitied him for always thinking about others and never himself. I looked at Han Hao's somewhat disappointed face. I hugged his arm tightly and whispered to him, Xiao Hao, in the future, don't feel inferior because of this. In the future, you are you. You are a good man, and a very responsible one at that. Chapter 213. I leaned against Han Hao's arm. My heart ached for him from the bottom of my heart. He was always thinking about other people, but he never thought about himself. Han Hao stopped and pulled me into his arms. He gently kissed my forehead and said softly, Shaoli, I'm content. I'm really content now. I have you and Yi by my side. This is the best gift that God has given me. I will definitely cherish it. So, please don't run away anymore. Please let me stay by your side and take good care of you, okay? I will definitely make you and Yi happy. I reached out and hugged Han Hao. I felt really happy. When it was about 5 in the afternoon, we finally finished our trip to the amusement park. I looked at Yi. Yi was in a good mood. She was very awake the whole afternoon. It seemed that she got along well with Han Hao. In the afternoon, she dragged Han Hao to play with a lot of entertainment facilities. Han Hao didn't refuse. He happily hugged Yi and played with her for a long time. I looked at them from afar and felt very happy. When we got back to the car, I sat in the front passenger seat and felt very tired. I glanced at Han Hao and he let out a long breath. It seemed that he was also very tired. However, Yi was very energetic in the child's seat. She suddenly looked at Han Hao and shouted, Daddy hug! Daddy hug! I looked at Han Hao with a black face. I didn't have to guess. He must have taught her. Han Hao looked at me and smiled awkwardly. I looked at him and asked softly, Did you teach her? I turned to look at Yi. She was still shouting loudly for her daddy to hug her. Han Hao didn't have a choice. He got out of the car and opened the door to carry Yi out of the child's seat. Then he looked at me and said softly, Shaoli, Yi wants me to carry her. I can't drive. I'll have to trouble you to drive back. I nodded and sat in the driver's seat. Han Hao carried Yi and sat in the front passenger seat. I turned to look at Yi. Yi stopped making a fuss and hugged Han Hao's neck tightly. That coquettish look was too much like a daughter acting coquettishly with her father. I looked at Han Hao with disdain. Han Hao smiled and said to me, No choice. Yi is like me. I didn't know what to do with his nonsensical answer. However, I wasn't angry. I was happy that Yi liked him. Since Han Hao treated Yi like her father, then he could do whatever he wanted. We started driving back because I received a call from my mother saying that the Red Baron, Suri, and Xinyao were going to eat at home today. Han Hao and I didn't eat outside. The road back was smooth and I didn't feel tired driving. On the other hand, Han Hao was playing with Yi the whole time. Yi obviously didn't feel tired even after sleeping. She didn't know how tired her father Han Hao was. I felt sorry for him. I looked at Yi with a serious expression and said, "Yi, you're not being good right now. Look at how tired your Uncle Han Hao is. Be good, let him sleep for a while." Yi suddenly looked at me seriously and said loudly, "It's Daddy. It's Daddy." I didn't think that a title would make her so serious. I had no choice but to change my words and say, all right. It's Han Hao's Daddy. Be good and let Daddy rest for a while. Yi, go back to the back seat and be good." Yi didn't listen to me. She hugged Han Hao's neck tightly and leaned on his shoulder. She looked at me with a wronged expression. It was as if I had bullied her and she was about to cry. Han Hao looked at Yi and felt sorry for her. He whispered to me, "Just let Yi play with me. I'm fine. I'm also very willing to play with Yi." He gently stroked Yi's hair. The two of them looked at me lovingly. I didn't know what to say in response. I could only choose to silently agree. The drive back was quite long. When we were about 2/3 of the way home, I turned my head to look. Han Hao had fallen asleep with Yi in his arms. Yi was still sleeping soundly with Han Hao in her arms. Han Hao was also sleeping soundly with Yi in his arms. I increased the temperature in the car a little, afraid that the two of them would get cold. Then, I quietly drove the car, but I was very happy. Finally, we arrived at the house. I stopped the car and the housekeeper came out of the house. I unloaded the things in the car first, then walked to the front passenger seat and gently woke Han Hao up. Yi was still asleep. Han Hao's appearance when he woke up was very cute. What moved me was that the first thing he saw when he woke up was Yi. When he saw that Yi was still sleeping soundly, his expression became very happy. I woke him up. He hugged Yi, and I held his arm as we walked into the living room. After we entered the living room, I saw that everyone was there. Xinyao saw me from afar and immediately rushed over. She saw how intimate Han Hao and I were, and the lewd smile on her face made me blush. Xinyao pulled me to the side and whispered, "Oh, so sweet. Looks like it's done." I whispered in her ear, "Yeah, I promised him that I'll be with him properly." Xinyao suddenly hugged me and said, Yep. Suri and I want the two of you to be happy. It's because we want to see the results of the two of you that we came here to scrounge off your meal." I looked at her with a dark expression. "It's because the two of you are too lazy and don't want to do it. Can't you find a better reason?" After hearing my words, Xinyao could only laugh. I turned my head to look at Suri and Han Hao. The two of them were chatting happily. I didn't know when Yi had woken up, but the Red Baron was playing with her. We chatted for a while before Mother called us for dinner. We went to the dining room and saw a sumptuous meal on the table. It looked like Mother had prepared it for a long time. After everyone sat down, Han Hao sat across from me. Father sat down and we could start eating. But at that moment, Yi suddenly became unhappy. She turned her head to look at me and shouted, "I want Daddy to carry me. I want Daddy." Of course I knew who Yi's daddy was. I suddenly felt awkward and didn't know what to do. Xinyao was the first to cry out. She looked at me and shouted, "Wow, Yi changed her mind so quickly. Yi, tell Auntie if the daddy you're talking about is the one sitting across from you." Yi nodded seriously. She turned her head and looked at Han Hao as if she was about to cry. She shouted, "Yi wants Daddy. Yi wants Daddy to carry her." Han Hao walked to my side and took Yi from my arms. Only then did Yi calm down. She hugged Han Hao's neck and gently wiped the corners of her eyes. It looked like she was really crying. Chapter 2:14. At this moment, my mother looked at me and asked softly, "What's going on with Shaoli?" I looked at my mother, trying to think of how to phrase my words. Han Hao looked at my mother and said, "Auntie, don't ask Shaoli anymore. I won't hide it from you anymore. Actually, I've liked Shaoli for a long time. Before she married the Duanmu Kei, I already liked her. When she was preparing to divorce the Duanmu Kei, I thought that I would be able to get Shaoli, but she rejected me at the time. Now, I've gotten her, and has accepted me. When we went out to play today, I liked too much and thought that she needed a father, so I took the liberty of teaching to call me Daddy. I'm sorry, but this was my decision, so please don't blame Xiaoli. Everyone suddenly fell silent. I suddenly felt a little awkward. At this moment, my father looked at me seriously and said, Xiaoli, is what Xiao Hao said true? I suddenly felt a little nervous. I sighed and looked at my father and said loudly, Dad, yes, Xiao Hao was right. I did agree to his proposal, and likes him a lot. I'm willing to let him be Yi's father. Father, if there's anything wrong, please tell me. Don't blame Xiao Hao. It's not wrong for us to like him. My mother and father looked at each other. My mother suddenly smiled and said, Silly girl, we want you to be happy. How could we blame you? I was stunned. I looked at my mother and said softly, Mom, what do you mean? My father coughed twice. He looked at me and said softly, Good. Xiao Hao is a good kid. Don't bully him. Take care of Yi. If you really can't take care of her, tell us. The family will definitely support you. My eyes were a little wet. I stood up and looked at my father and mother. Thank you, Dad, Mom. Thank you. I turned my head to look at Han Hao. He smiled at me, and I smiled back at him. Perseverance is victory. Everything is worth it. After dinner, my parents left. They said that they had an appointment to attend a tea party at a friend's house. There were only a few young people left in the house. Xinyao and Suri were playing cards with the Red Baron on the sofa. Han Hao and I were playing with Yi. Yi really liked to play with Han Hao. The two of them had a lot of fun. Time passed quickly. We chatted for a long time. After a while, Suri and Xinyao left. After sending them off, we returned to the living room. My parents had also returned. Han Hao looked at the time and put Yi in my arms. He said to my father, Uncle, Auntie, it's getting late. I should go back. After hearing Han Hao say that, Yi actually couldn't take it anymore. She burst into tears and tried to throw herself at Han Hao from my arms. I couldn't stop her. No matter how I tried to persuade her, Yi wouldn't listen. She kept crying. I thought she was pretending, but she was really crying. Soon, her face was covered in tears and snot. I tried to persuade her and wipe her face, but I didn't know how to comfort her. My parents looked at Yi and their hearts ached. My father took Yi from my arms and gently patted her back. He said to her, My precious Yi, tell Grandpa, why are you crying so hard? Yi wiped her tears and cried, I want Pa. Daddy. Wants Daddy. Hearing Yi say that, we all understood what she meant. At this time, my mother looked at my father and said softly, Let Hao stay. My father, of course, felt sorry for Yi. He thought for a moment and looked at Han Hao. Hao, is there anything you need? If there's nothing, then stay. I rarely see Yi cry so hard. She probably doesn't want to leave you. So stay. If Yi is happy, then we are all happy. At this time, Han Hao rubbed his head awkwardly. Is that appropriate? Her mother smiled and said, What's wrong with that? I'll ask the nanny to find you a change of clothes and toiletries. You can stay here tonight. It's rare that my precious granddaughter likes you so much, so you should accompany her. Thank you, Auntie. Thank you, Uncle. After Han Hao said that, his parents smiled and left. At this time, the Red Baron also stood up. She looked at us and said, All right, I'm going back to my room to read. In front of the baby, the two of you should control yourselves. If you really can't, then send Yi to my room. Remember to take safety precautions. Of course, it's fine if you don't do it. I don't think Yi would mind having a little brother or sister. With that, the Red Baron left with a smirk, leaving Han Hao and I in a mess in the living room. In the end, I went to the guest rooms on the second and first floor to check one by one. As I expected, All the rooms were closed and couldn't be opened at all. I could only give up. I thought about letting Han Hao and Yi sleep in my room while I squeezed in with the Red Baron for the whole night. In the end, when I knocked on the Red Baron's door, the Red Baron actually told me that she had a cold and wasn't feeling well. She bluntly rejected me. It seemed that they were hinting that I would have to spend the night in the same room as Han Hao. Although it was very awkward, I still accepted the reality. When I returned to the bedroom, I only saw Yi playing happily in the children's playground that I had arranged for her. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. It seemed that Han Hao was taking a shower. He probably realized that there were no other rooms in the house that he could enter other than my room. Sigh, I must have a good talk with them tomorrow morning. I walked to Yi's side and played with her toys. Yi looked at me and said in a childish voice, "Daddy is taking a shower. He asked us to wait for him." My face darkened. How did this child know what I was thinking? Needless to say, it was definitely Han Hao who taught her. If she continued to be so smart, I wouldn't be able to control her anymore. Not long after, the bathroom door opened and Han Hao walked out. I turned to look at him. Luckily, he was wearing pajamas. I thought that he would come out completely naked. Han Hao looked at me and smiled. He walked over and picked Yi up. He skillfully helped Yi change into her pajamas. Chapter 2:15. Han Hao carried Yi to the bed. He patted her gently as he told her a story. Yi was well behaved. She laid in Han Hao's arms and closed her eyes. Han Hao glanced at me and gestured for me to quickly wash up. I nodded and took out a change of clothes from the wardrobe and walked into the bathroom. Actually, my heart was still very complicated. Although I had already agreed to be Han Hao's girlfriend, it wasn't good for us to sleep together right after we decided to be together. After taking a shower, I stood naked in front of the mirror. I carefully studied my reflection in the mirror. Although I had given birth to Yi, my figure hadn't gone out of shape. I had taken good care of myself. I didn't look like a mother anymore. I put on my pajamas and stood at the bathroom door. I sighed and decided to open the door and walk out. I'd better let nature take its course. I pushed the door open and walked out of the bathroom. Han Hao was still lying on the bed with Yi in his arms. I glanced at Yi and saw that she had already fallen asleep. Han Hao was still lying next to Yi and gently patting her. I walked over and, afraid that I would wake Yi up, I quietly climbed onto the bed. Actually, I never let Yi sleep next to me because I was afraid that I would crush her if I slept too deeply. I always carried her to her own cradle to sleep. But seeing Han Hao taking care of Yi so seriously, I was quite happy. Han Hao raised his head and looked at me with a smile. I quietly lay next to Yi and reached out to touch her forehead. Luckily, she wasn't sweating and the temperature in the room was just right. Han Hao and I lay next to Yi. I didn't know if he had fallen asleep, but I didn't feel sleepy at all. I didn't know how much time had passed, but Han Hao whispered to me, "Shaoli, are you asleep?" "I'm not. I don't know why, but I can't sleep." Indeed, I couldn't sleep either. Then Han Hao continued, "I'll hug you to sleep. That way, you should be able to sleep." I was stunned and my face turned red. The light in the room was dim, so he probably couldn't see my embarrassed expression. "That's not a good idea." My voice was a little shaky. Of course, I didn't know how to answer him. "It's okay. Come on, I'll carry Yi here, and I'll carry you here. We won't delay each other. You've been tired all day, you can't not sleep. Come on, lie on my side." Han Hao's words were very gentle, but I still felt that it was inappropriate. It wasn't that I didn't want anything to happen between us because of my pride. It was just that Yi was still around. Although she was still young, it wasn't appropriate to do it in front of a child. I thought for a moment and then said to him, "Forget it. I can sleep. You should sleep too. You are more tired than I am today. Don't worry, nothing will happen between us. Now is not the time. When the opportunity arises, you won't be able to escape. I just want to hug you to sleep quietly." Don't think of me as a bad person, okay? Obviously, Han Hao had realized what I was thinking. Hearing him say that, my heart calmed down. I smiled and said to him, okay. Then, I crawled to his other side and lay in his arms. Just like that, Han Hao hugged Yi with one arm and me with the other. The three of us lay quietly like that. Strangely enough, I felt sleepy lying in Han Hao's arms. I lay on his chest and listened to his heartbeat. Gradually, I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was already the next morning. I looked at the time in a daze. It was only 5 in the morning. I turned my head to look at Han Hao. He was gone, and so was Yi. I instantly woke up. Just as I was about to get dressed and get out of bed, Han Hao walked out of the bathroom with Yi in his arms. I let out a long breath and looked at him. So you brought Yi to the bathroom. You scared me. Han Hao looked at me and said, did I wake you up? Yi just woke up and wanted to go to the bathroom. She woke me up, so I took her to the bathroom. I didn't expect you to wake up too. Go back to sleep. It's still early. Then, Han Hao carried Yi to her little bed. He stood by the bed and coaxed her for a while. Yi fell asleep. Then, Han Hao climbed onto the bed and lay down. He gestured for me to lie down too. I hesitated for a moment, but still lay down next to him. Han Hao turned around and hugged me. I suddenly felt nervous and my face was a little red. Han Hao smiled and gently stroked my hair. He whispered to me, Shaoli, don't be nervous. I told you that nothing will happen between us. Let me hug you for a while. It's rare that I have this free time to hug you, you know? Ever since the last time you stayed at my house, I was even more determined that I will definitely have the opportunity to give you happiness. So now that I'm hugging you like this, I feel very happy. It's so rare that you're finally my woman. I leaned into Han Hao's embrace and whispered, aren't I right by your side? Don't worry, I won't leave you. I hugged Han Hao tightly. This feeling of comfort made me very happy. Han Hao cupped my face and gently kissed my forehead. He looked at me and whispered, Shaoli, marry me. Marry me, okay? I was stunned by Han Hao's sudden proposal. I thought for a moment. Just as I was about to say something to Han Hao suddenly cupped my face and kissed my lips. This gentle kiss made me not know what to do. Unknowingly, I fell into his embrace. The burning sensation in my body grew stronger and stronger. Han Hao hugged me tighter and tighter. Unconsciously, my body's reaction made me a little shy. Han Hao suddenly stopped. He looked at my blushing face and smiled. Aya, your mouth says no, but your body is very honest. I turned my head and didn't dare to look at Han Hao. I closed my eyes and whispered, Xiao Hao, you've changed. You weren't like this before. Why have you become so perverted now? Han Hao smiled. He gently stroked my hair and said, because I like you. Han Hao's words made me speechless. I could only quietly lean against his chest and pretend that I didn't understand anything. I pretended that I didn't understand anything. Just like that, Han Hao hugged me and went back to sleep. We were originally sleeping well, but we were woken up by Yi again. But there was no other way. When I got up and looked at the time, it was already 9 o'clock. Yi must be starving. Han Hao got up faster than me. He quickly put on his clothes and washed up. Then, he took Yi downstairs. I now trusted him to take care of the child, so I didn't get lazy. After washing up, I began to tidy up the bedroom. After tidying up, I went downstairs. The whole family had finished breakfast and gone out to do some work. Only I was left. Han Hao was waiting for me in the dining room with Yi in his arms. Chapter 2:16. I sat next to Han Hao. He pushed the breakfast in front of me for me to eat while he held Yi and fed her. He also taught Yi how to use a spoon and chopsticks. Han Hao must be a very responsible father. After a while, Han Hao looked at me and smiled. Dear, the weather looks good today. Do you have any plans today? I thought for a moment and asked, aren't you busy in Kurosawa today? There should be a lot of things to do in Kurosawa. Han Hao shook his head and said, it's fine. There are so many people in the club. It's fine if you don't need me. Besides, I have more important things to do now. I have to spend time with my wife and child. Isn't that right, Yi? Han Hao hugged Yi and kissed Yi's face. Yi hugged Han Hao's neck and kissed his face. I wasn't used to seeing the father and son act so intimately in front of me. I thought for a moment and asked Han Hao, is it really fine? Han Hao nodded and smiled at me. Of course it's fine. Hurry up and tell me, where do you want me to go with you today? I'm willing to go anywhere. Looking at Han Hao's expression, I smiled happily and said, actually, it's nothing much. The baby products that Yi brought back from America are pretty much used up. I have to buy some new ones. My parents, the Red Baron, aren't home. I have to take care of the child. It's not very convenient for me to take care of the child and go shopping alone. Han Hao nodded thoughtfully and said softly, so that's how it is. How about I take care of Yi for you and you go by yourself? I looked at Han Hao's mischievous expression and understood. He was angry that I didn't ask him. I smiled and hugged Han Hao's neck. I gently kissed his lips and said with a smile, how about it? My dear boyfriend, would you like to take your precious daughter and accompany your dear me to the mall? Han Hao was stunned when he saw me kiss him. He nodded and said, of course, it's my pleasure. It's my duty to accompany my wife and child. Han Hao hugged me and kissed my lips softly. To be honest, the feeling of being in love was just like being in love. Then, she looked up at me and then at Han Hao. She looked at Han Hao seriously and said loudly, Daddy, I want a kiss too. Han Hao glanced at Yi and smiled. He gently kissed Yi's face. Yi was very happy. She looked even cuter when she was happy. After breakfast, we packed up and headed out. In order to make it easier to take care of Yi, I brought the baby carrier with me. I didn't even have to say anything as Han Hao took it from me. When we arrived at the shopping mall, he carried Yi on his back and held me with one hand. From time to time, he would look at Yi, worried that she would be uncomfortable or have any problems. The temperature in the mall was moderate. Han Hao and I started our shopping trip. We first went to the baby store and bought a lot of necessities for Yi. There were 2 big bags full of them. Because there were too many, we decided to send them back first. After we sent them back, we came back and passed by the children's clothing store. Han Hao's interest was piqued and he started picking clothes for Yi. I was a little tired. I sat on the sofa in the store and watched the father and son pick out clothes. Yi didn't feel tired at all. Every time he picked out an outfit, Han Hao would personally help her put it on and then review it himself. If he felt it was good, he would let me take a look. If I felt it was average, he would immediately pass it off. After almost an hour, he actually picked out no less than 20 sets of clothes and shoes for Yi. Each set of clothes had a different pair of shoes. I thought it was very extravagant, but Han Hao didn't think so. He thought it was worth it because it was for Yi. After we finished shopping at the children's clothing store, it was time for lunch. We took the French meal coupon that Han Hao won from the shooting last time and went to the store. The owner didn't lie to me, the coupon was usable. We picked a seat by the window and sat down, waiting for the food to be served. Actually, I hadn't shopped enough, I was just tired. After we finished eating, we could go shopping again. Han Hao put Yi down. I looked at his t-shirt and saw that it was soaked with sweat. I looked at him and said, Xiao Hao, your clothes are all wet. Later, I'll take you to buy a new one to change into. Han Hao looked down and smiled at me. I just noticed. It's fine, I'm just carrying Yi on my back. It's fine, I'll have to carry it on my back again and change into a new one. But I'll have to buy you a few new sets of clothes. Ever since you got pregnant, you probably haven't had time to dress yourself up. You've given all your energy to Yi. You don't cherish yourself, but I have to cherish you. Later, go pick a few sets of clothes that you like and I'll pay for them. Don't fight with me because you're my woman. Han Hao smiled and stroked my hair. I'm not like before anymore. I don't have to go out to meet other people, and I don't have to dress myself up all the time. I just have to take care of E. Now, I have to take care of you. That's enough. I don't want to care about other things. You see, ever since I came back, I'm not allowed to do Red Minghue's work anymore. I'm quite free. That's because Uncle wants you to rest well. Everyone knows how good you are at work. Don't even think about slacking off, silly. I don't want you to be so tired. It's just that right now, I don't earn as much as you do. Han Hao sighed. I looked at Han Hao. I understood what he meant. I smiled and said to him, Darling, you earned that money with your own ability. But what about me? You can say that I'm supported by my family. I can't compare to you. In the future, I'll find a job that relies on my own effort to earn money. That way, I can share your burden. What do you think? Han Hao shook his head. He looked at me and said, How could I bear to let you work so hard? Don't worry, your husband is very capable. I'll definitely take good care of you and the baby. Don't worry. Just as Han Hao and I were chatting, the sound of an ear-piercing quarrel came from the entrance of the restaurant. I looked in the direction of the sound and saw a fashionably dressed woman standing there with her hands on her waist. She was pointing at the greeter at the entrance and cursing. Her appearance and dress didn't look out of place at all. I hated this kind of behavior from the bottom of my heart. Most of the people who could dine in this kind of high-end restaurant were people of high status. But it was the first time I saw someone who had no manners like this. But then, I saw a person who I would never forget for the rest of my life. Chapter 217. That woman was still arguing fiercely with the waiter, and the surrounding customers who came to eat also felt that it was disturbing. Right at this moment, the restaurant's door was pushed open, and a man entered. It was a face that I would never forget. It was none other than Duanmu Ke, who I hadn't seen for a long time. Seeing him again, I was stunned. He had changed a lot, and his clothes weren't as fashionable as before. Instead, he gave off a decadent aura. Moreover, Duanmu Ke had lost a lot of weight. If I used an idiom to describe him, he would be dispirited and listless. However, this couldn't hide his handsome face. But he couldn't hide his handsome face. Xiao Hao looked at me in a daze. Xiao Li, what's wrong? He asked softly. What are you looking at? He followed my gaze and saw Duanmu Quebec. He was stunned for a moment. Xiao Li, he said softly. Don't look at him. Turn around and look at me, okay? I ignored Han Hao's words and turned my head to look at Duanmu Ke and the woman. The woman was still arguing with the waiter, but Duanmu Ke just stood next to her, not saying a word. Just as I was lost in my thoughts, Han Hao suddenly said loudly, Xiao Li, I said, don't look at him. I turned to look at Han Hao. It was the first time I had seen him so angry. I suddenly felt nervous. I nodded and stopped looking at Duanmu Ke and the woman. The food was served, and we started eating. However, I wasn't in the mood to enjoy the food. Han Hao watched my every move. Honey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk to you like that. I didn't mean to. I just didn't want you to be in a bad mood after seeing him with another woman. I nodded and said to Han Hao, I understand how you feel. I'm not angry. I sighed. That woman, is she Xiao Ke's fiancée? Han Hao looked at me and nodded solemnly. I smiled coldly and looked up at Han Hao. He was feeding E. I thought to myself, with such a good man who loves me and E, why should I care about anything else? I looked at Han Hao and smiled. All right, I'm fine. I'm fine. You're enough for me. I smiled at Han Hao and continued eating. Han Hao and I chatted about the places we should go next. He offered to buy me some clothes, and I gladly accepted. I also told him that I would pick some clothes for him. At that moment, the woman's voice sounded in my ear again. I really didn't want to look at her, so I lowered my head and continued eating. I felt that the voice was getting closer and closer, and the content of their conversation was getting clearer. I heard the woman say, "Just now, that disgusting waiter was so mean to me. Why didn't you say anything? Could it be that you couldn't hear me?" But I didn't hear Duanmu K's voice. The woman continued to shout, "Other people are saying how outstanding you are. Bah! You're a coward. You can't even stand up for me for such a small matter. How could I be so blind to like you?" The woman's words were really vicious. Duanmu K probably couldn't bear to listen to them. "Can you not talk anymore?" I heard Duanmu K's deep voice. Listening to his tone, I could feel that he was restraining himself, not exploding. This wasn't like Duanmu K's character at all. But I didn't know why he had changed so much. At that moment, a "pa" sound was heard. We all raised our heads. The woman had raised her hand and slapped Duanmu K's face. At that time, I was shocked. Right next to my table, the woman looked around. Then she shouted at us, "What are you looking at? Eat your food." We lowered our heads again, not knowing what would happen next. The woman looked at Duanmu K and shouted, "This is a reward for the way you spoke to me. Don't go too far. Don't you know what kind of status you have now? You still dare to yell at me. Do you really think you're the same person as before? I'm leaving. You can be a shrew by yourself here." When Duanmu K said these words, it was clear that he was already extremely angry. The woman yelled, "You!" After saying that, she threw her bag onto our dining table, right into the bowl of soup. The soup splashed everywhere. Han Hao, E and I didn't manage to dodge it, so the soup splashed all over our clothes. E was probably shocked because she burst into tears. Han Hao quickly took out a tissue and wiped the parts of E's body that had been splashed. I was really angry. If it was just directed at me, it would have been fine. But now that E was involved, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I stood up and walked over to the woman. I looked at her and said loudly, "What are you doing? Can't you see we're eating here? It's fine if you quarrel next to our table, but you threw things on our table. Can't you see we have a child here? What if you hurt the child? Can you afford to take responsibility?" The woman looked me up and down. Then, with a look of disdain, she said, "Where did this village girl come from? I just threw things. What can you do about it? Does your family own this restaurant? I can do whatever I want. What can you do about it?" I turned to look at Han Hao and said softly, "Xiao Hao, take E and leave. Remember to call the police." The woman put her hands on her hips and looked at me. She said loudly, "I'll see who dares to call the police." "You can try." The woman's unforgiving attitude made me feel disgusted. Then, someone patted my shoulder from behind. I turned my head and saw Duanmu Quebec. He looked at me in disbelief and said, "Shaoli? You're Shaoli?" Only then did I realize that I had exposed myself in front of Duanmu Quebec. I couldn't care less. I looked at him and said softly, "Hurry up and take her away." Then, I sat down again and tidied up my things. I looked at Han Hao and said, "Xiao Hao, let's go. We'll eat somewhere else. This place is too messy. It's not suitable to take E with us." Then, I stood up and prepared to leave. Unexpectedly, the woman stopped me. She looked at me with contempt and said, "Yo, what's wrong? You want to run away after standing up for me? Weren't you yelling at me so fiercely just now? Why don't you have any confidence now?" Duanmu K walked in front of me. He took the woman's hand and said, "Let's go. You're already interrupting their meal. Hurry up and leave. We'll eat somewhere else." Chapter 218. The woman shook off Duanmu K's hand. She looked at me fiercely and said, "I'm not leaving. I want to see what this woman can do to me. I'm going to throw it." Then, she picked up the bag that had fallen into the soup and slammed it on our table again. This time, it was fortunate that Han Hao caught E in time, so the soup didn't splash on E's body. On the other hand, Han Hao's back was splashed with soup, and E cried even harder. The surrounding customers who came to eat also stopped and looked at us. The restaurant's waiter quickly brought a towel and started to treat Han Hao and E. He also kept apologizing to us. I was very angry. I looked at the woman and said angrily, "Please apologize to him and the child." The woman smiled coldly and looked at me. Apologize? Stop dreaming. I'm telling you, I've never apologized to anyone in my life. Don't even think about it. Clenching my fists tightly, I looked at the woman and said word by word, "Dao. Apologize." At this time, Han Hao stood up with E in his arms. He looked at me and said softly, "Honey, don't be like this." Luckily, it didn't splash E's eyes. It's not a big deal. She's probably just scared. Let's just forget about this. It's not good to make things worse. Look at E crying so hard. Let's take E out to play and distract her. It's not good for a child to cry too much. I calmed down for a while. I looked at Han Hao and then at E, who was lying in Han Hao's arms and crying her heart out. I thought about it and decided to swallow my anger. I picked up the things and looked at Han Hao. Let's go. I took E from Han Hao's arms. Han Hao walked past the woman with the pile of clothes he bought for E. Before he took 2 steps, I heard the woman gloating behind him. See? A coward is a coward. If you don't have money, capital, or power, don't come to such a high-end restaurant to eat. Don't you think it's embarrassing? She wants to quarrel, but she can't win. She's only fit to give birth to a child and be a housewife at home. That man is really blind. Following such a trash, he's not ashamed at all. He even dares to bring her out? Hearing the woman's words, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I handed E to Han Hao. I turned around and quickly walked in front of the woman. I reached out my hand and slapped her face. She was stunned for a moment. After she reacted, she covered her face and shouted at me, "You bitch! How dare you hit me?" After saying that, she reached out to hit me with her backhand, but I cleverly dodged it. Then, I slapped her backhand again. Just like this, the two of us wrestled together, but she was just a rich second generation after all. How could she compare with me? During the 2 years she spent in the United States with Red Baron, she also taught me some basic close combat techniques. Sure enough, I used it today. After a few moves, she was completely knocked to the ground by me. The arrogance she had just now was completely gone. She was just lying on the ground in a sorry state. She glared at me. "Who the hell are you? Just you wait. I won't let you go." I looked at him with an expressionless face. "It seems like I haven't hit you enough. I just punched you a few times because you were being unreasonable and hurt my people. You made my baby cry. That's fine. If something really happened, I definitely wouldn't let you go. Also, you don't need to know who I am. Your fiancé will tell you who I am." After saying that, I glanced at Duanmu, Quebec. He just looked at me with a solemn expression and didn't say a word. I turned around and walked to Han Hao's side. I carried E over and then held onto Han Hao's arm as we left the restaurant. I didn't look at Duanmu K's eyes. I didn't want to know what kind of expression he would have. Right now, I only needed to accompany Han Hao and E. I could only sympathize with him for having such a fiancé. It turned out that he could also completely forget the person he once loved. Walking out of the restaurant, Han Hao and I found a secluded place to change out of E's dirty clothes. It just so happened that we had bought new clothes for her, so she put them on. After putting on the new clothes, E stopped crying and making a fuss. Han Hao also bought her a lollipop, which made her even happier. When we left the restaurant, it just so happened that we were wearing men's clothes. We randomly found a store to deal with Han Hao's clothes and changed into the new clothes. After paying the bill, Han Hao looked at me. He didn't have time to change into the new clothes and was still wearing the dress that had been dirted by that woman. Han Hao walked to my side and looked at me with a pained expression. "Idiot, why did you suddenly attack just now? I was holding Yi and couldn't stop you. I shook my head and looked at Han Hao. This kind of woman, you can't reason with her. Only violence can solve problems. Han Hao smiled. I understand that. But dear, in front of Yi, being so violent to your beautiful and gentle mother isn't very good, is it? Right. Fortunately, I kept Yi's face to me, so she didn't see your manly side. How are you going to thank me? I nodded thoughtfully and said to Han Hao, Oh right. You're so thoughtful. I knew you were the best. I hugged Han Hao and gently kissed his face. At this moment, the waitress walked over. She smiled at us and said, The two of you have such a good relationship. It's rare to see a married couple with a baby who is still so loving. Sir, these are the clothes you just changed into. We've already packed them for you. Han Hao and I quickly separated. Han Hao smiled and said to the waitress, Thank you. Oh right. I would like to ask, which floor are the women's clothes on? My wife's clothes were accidentally dirted, so I have to quickly buy a new set for her to change into. The waitress told us where the women's clothes were, and Han Hao pulled me out of the store. As soon as we walked out of the store, we saw Duanmu K leaning against the opposite wall. He was looking at us, obviously waiting for us. Han Hao and I looked at each other and then walked over. Duanmu K looked at us and then at Yi, who was in Han Hao's arms. He suddenly became silent. Han Hao could tell what Duanmu K was thinking. In a soft voice he asked, Xiao K, why are you here? Duanmu K came back to his senses. He looked at Han Hao and then at me. Shaoli, you came back to China. When did you come back? I looked at Duanmu K and nodded. In a soft voice, I said, Yes, I came back to China a while ago. I didn't expect to meet you here. Your fiancée is very beautiful, but her temper is a bit bad. Duanmu K smiled bitterly. He looked at Yi and said in a soft voice, This baby is yours and Han Hao's, right? It's so cute. I looked at Duanmu K's eyes and saw a trace of sadness. Chapter 219. Han Hao smiled. He hugged Yi and looked at Duanmu Quebec. Be good, Yi. This is Uncle Duanmu. Come and say hi. Yi turned her head and glanced at Duanmu Quebec. Then she turned her head and lay in Han Hao's arms, no longer looking at him. It was very awkward. Han Hao smiled at Duanmu K and said, Xiao K, don't mind her. Yi is a bit shy. Maybe she's not familiar with you. Duanmu K smiled and looked at me. It's okay. It's nice to see you guys so loving. I envy you guys. I just looked at Duanmu K and didn't say anything. I really didn't know what to say. The three of us just stood there facing each other. The atmosphere was very awkward. Maybe everyone had something on their minds and didn't want to show it. Yi lifted her head from Han Hao's arms. She looked at Han Hao and shouted, Daddy, Daddy. Han Hao gently patted Yi's back and said softly, Be good. Daddy's here. What's wrong, baby? Yi turned her head and pointed at my clothes. Mommy's clothes are dirty. Daddy bought them for her. Yi heard Han Hao say that he wanted to buy clothes for me. It was rare for her to remember. Han Hao looked at me and realized that I was the only one of us who hadn't changed. He turned to Duanmu K and said, Xiao K, I'm sorry. I have to take Xiao Li to buy clothes. Yi kept saying that she wanted to go, so I couldn't refuse. Duanmu K nodded and looked at us. I'm sorry. I apologize on her behalf for interrupting your lunch. I'll treat you guys to a meal when I have the chance. You guys go shopping first. I'm going back too. With that, Duanmu K waved at us and left. I watched Duanmu K's back as he left. My feelings were very complicated. It was hard to imagine that the once wanton and arrogant Duanmu K would become so tolerant. I didn't know if this was a good thing for him to train himself, or if it had restrained his nature. It made me feel uneasy. At this moment, Han Hao put his arm around my shoulder and whispered to me, Darling, don't think too much. Little K will be fine. The path he's walking now is his own choice. Don't think too much about it. He'll definitely be fine. Let's go. Ee ordered me to take you to buy clothes. Let's go. I want to buy beautiful clothes for my wife. With that, Han Hao took my hand and carried E's clothes to the women's clothing store. Because my style was fixed, the brands I bought were also fixed. I found a store that I often bought clothes from. As soon as we entered the store, I didn't even have time to pick out clothes before Han Hao put the things on the counter and began to pick out clothes for me. I shook my head helplessly and sat down on the sofa. Han Hao, on the other hand, seemed to be very happy. Ee also seemed to be doing the same. Just then, a waitress came over and handed me a cup of coffee. She smiled and asked, "The gentleman and the baby over there picking out clothes. Are they your husband and child?" I turned my head and looked over. Han Hao took out an outfit for Ee to look at. Ee's little head shook like a rattle drum. Han Hao put the outfit back on the rack and began to pick out other clothes. I nodded and said to the waitress, "Yes, they are. My husband and my child." The waitress looked at them again and smiled at me. "Your husband and your child have good taste. The clothes they picked out are perfect for you. Miss, you must be very happy to have such a caring husband and a cute child." I smiled at the waitress and said, "Thank you." It was as she said. I was very happy to have such a caring husband and such a cute child. As my thoughts wandered, Han Hao came over with a large pile of clothes. He sat down next to me and hugged Ee. "Darling, I've picked out so many clothes. Do you want to try them on? I've already asked the waitress to find clothes for you according to your size. Take a look, and if you like them, we'll buy them all." I looked at the clothes. There was a sharp contrast. The ladylike, light-colored clothes had been picked out for me by Weld Good Liking. The brighter, more fashionable clothes had been picked out for me by Ee. Perhaps it was because she had been with Xin Yao for a long time, but E's sense of beauty had skyrocketed. I was afraid that she wouldn't like the clothes I picked out for her in the future. I thought for a moment. Looking at the table full of clothes, I said to Han Hao, "Let's buy them all. You and E picked these out with great care. It's such a rare gift, I can't bear to turn it down, okay?" I reached into the pile and took out a simple but elegant dress. "Let me change out of this first," I said to Han Hao. Then I turned and walked into the changing room. By the time I was done changing, Han Hao had already paid the bill. There were a dozen more shopping bags. Fortunately, the waitress was very nice to us. She helped us carry a lot of shopping bags to the parking lot. Of course, Han Hao also tipped her accordingly. Then we left the mall and headed back home. Overall, I was very satisfied with today's date. E might have been exhausted, because she slept soundly in my arms on the way home. Han Hao drove as slowly as possible, afraid that he would wake E up. When we arrived home, I carried E to the bedroom first. After putting her to sleep, I went downstairs. The housekeeper had already helped Han Hao bring all the things to the living room. He had bought quite a lot, and the coffee table was full. I asked the housekeeper to help me tidy up the things. I happened to hear that dinner was being prepared at home, so I asked Han Hao to take a break so that we could eat together. Father hadn't returned yet because of some matters at the club. Mother and the Red Baron were still at home, so we sat in the living room and chatted. Not long after we sat down, Han Hao's phone rang. He walked to the living room door to answer the call. After a few simple words, he hung up. Then he walked over to my side and sat down. He looked at me and then at my mother. "Auntie, I have to go. I just received a call from the club. There's an urgent meeting later, so I have to go now." "Huh? Why don't you go after dinner? It won't make much of a difference. You've been busy all day and didn't even have a good lunch. There's a lot of good food at home, so why don't you eat a little before you go?" I said softly as I tugged on Han Hao's sleeve. Han Hao turned his head and gently stroked my hair. "No, it's okay. The club seems to be in a hurry, so I'd better hurry back." Han Hao looked at my mother. "Auntie, I'll go first. I'll come see you and uncle when I'm done. Then Han Hao stood up and prepared to leave. Chapter 220. Mom, I'm going to send him off. With that, I took Han Hao's arm and walked out of the living room. As we walked in the courtyard, I suddenly recalled the first time he sent me home and I walked him out of the courtyard. I looked at Han Hao. He was still as handsome as before. I said softly, Xiao Hao, do you remember the first time I sent you out of my house? Of course I do. Actually, when I saw you for the first time at Shallow Bar, I was already attracted to you. You were different from other women. Although I was sitting in the same booth with Xiao Kei, among so many people, I could tell at first glance that you were cold glaze. You were like a clear stream in the murky air. I couldn't help but want to get to know you better. Although I knew that your father and my father were friends, you didn't know about my existence. It wasn't good for me to appear in front of you out of the blue, so I tried to strike up a conversation with you. Now that I think about it, it's just like what happened not too long ago. Now that you're mine, I'm very satisfied. Han Hao stood in front of me. He reached out and pulled me into his arms. He said softly, Xiao Li, I might not be able to accompany you today. I just received a call from the secretariat. There seems to be a problem with the company's internal funds. It looks like there's been a lot of trouble recently, so I'll be very busy for the next few days. Maybe I won't have much time to accompany you. Don't be angry. You have to explain to E for me. She likes to tug on adults' clothes when she sleeps. If she can't, you can put your clothes next to her. Maybe she doesn't feel safe. When I'm done with my work, I'll come back to accompany you and E. Oh right, I bought a villa in the south of the city and it's already been renovated. When everything is done, I can formally propose to you and let you marry me and become my real woman, okay? Han Hao gently kissed my forehead. I took the opportunity to hug Han Hao's waist. I know. And I will wait for you to come back. Don't work too hard. Your health is important. You're not alone now. Take care of yourself. I leaned into Han Hao's arms. Although I was reluctant to part with him, a man should still prioritize his career, so I couldn't be soft-hearted and delay his work. After I reluctantly parted with Han Hao, he drove back. At the same time, I bumped into Suri and Xinyao at the door. I was already used to it. Xinyao looked at Han Hao's car and asked me, Sister-in-law, did brother Han Hao just leave? I nodded and said, Yep. He said there was something he needed to take care of at the club, so he left. You two are here to freeload again, right? You really came at the right time. Go on in. Ma prepared a lot of good food tonight, enough for you to eat. I looked at them with disdain. At this time, Xinyao threw herself into my arms and said coquettishly, You're so annoying. I didn't come here to freeload. I have something to talk to you about. Huh? What is it? I looked at Xinyao with a puzzled expression. Aya, let's go in first. We'll talk while we eat. After saying that, I was pushed into the living room by Xinyao. It just so happened that it was time for dinner. All of us went to the dining room. Because father hadn't come back yet, mother personally brought a bento to father. Tonight, only the four of us were left to have dinner together. Looking at the table full of food, we couldn't help but eat together. At this time, I looked at Xinyao and asked, Silly girl, just now at the door, you said you had something to talk to me about. What is it? Why are you being so secretive? At this time, Xinyao looked at me and said, Sister-in-law, you still don't know? Next week is Han Hao's birthday. You know his character. He's always been low-key. I was thinking about whether or not we should hold a birthday party for him. If uncle and auntie agree, we can hold it at your house. If you can't, then we can hold it at my house. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that we have to start planning it now, and there isn't much time left. I suddenly reacted and said in a daze, What? Xiao Hao's birthday is coming? Xinyao looked at me with disdain and said, Hey, that's your husband. You don't even know when your husband's birthday is. And you want me to think about it for you? Hurry up and think about how to hold a birthday party for him. I lowered my head and thought for a moment, then said to her, let's hold it at my house. I don't know how to face your parents, and they don't know about E's situation. It's better not to let them know. Let's hold it at my house. E is almost 3 years old, so let's hold her 3rd birthday together. I'm sure Xiao Hao will be very happy. As for the party, I don't have a clue. I rarely attend parties. At this moment, the Red Baron put down her chopsticks and looked at me. Leave this to me. I'll sort out the preparations for the party, the activities, and the budget the day after tomorrow and show them to you. As for the procurement and preparation work, I might need to borrow Suri to come with me. The Red Baron looked at Xinyao. After all, it was better to tell her in advance if she wanted to use her husband. Xinyao nodded and said calmly, it's fine, Red Baron. Use him as you please. If there's any hard work, tiring work, or dirty work, just let him do it. If you think he's not useful, just find a place to throw him away. You don't have to return him to me. When she said that, the Red Baron and I almost spat out our food. This must be a fake wife. Suri shook his head helplessly and said to me, I don't have a choice. I really don't know what to do with this ridiculous wife of mine. Miss, I want to return the goods. Will you accept them? I smiled awkwardly and said to him, I won't take the blame for this. You'd better take your wife in. The few of us chatted noisily at the dinner table for a long time. After dinner, Suri found an opportunity to whisper into my ear, Miss, find an opportunity and ask the Red Baron to tell you about the Kurosawa situation. I nodded and understood what he meant. I used E's bath as an excuse and asked Xinyao to go upstairs to give E a bath. Now, only Suri, the Red Baron, and I were left in the living room. I looked at Suri and asked softly, Suri, what do you want to tell me? I just received news this afternoon that there's a problem with one of the Kurosawa projects. The company has lost another sum of money. Right now, they're having a meeting to discuss how to deal with it. I have a feeling that it's not that simple. It seems like Secretary Li isn't the only traitor. There should be others. How could this be? No wonder Xiao Hao left in a hurry. So it was because of this. What's going on? Did you find out? You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.